Laurie Levinson in Los Angeles, your reaction to the verdict?
I guess because no one really could expect what would happen in this case. This is the verdict. The only problem here is we won't really know why, because the jurors indicated they don't want to speak to the press. The community was divided on this verdict. Because it was such a quick verdict, I expect that the trial outside of the courtroom is going to continue long after the trial inside the courtroom. But frankly, this is our jury system, and the jury has spoken.
Jury left court.
Well, I think that the jury sent the world a message about race, and I think that race was pivotal. It just had to be, because that was the focus of Johnny Cochran's impassioned plea. He rose up and said, do your duty the way jurors were meant to do your duty, to speak to the community, to speak to important issues, rise above whatever you may believe, and send a message to the LAPD. And I think that that's what they've done, and they don't want to talk about it. They just want the verdict to speak for itself, and its lightning speed is also very much part of that message. I tell you, I'm shocked, because every action and reaction from everything that went on looked like it was leading to a conviction. I was dead wrong. This is an amazing message to this country about race.
Ted Wells?
Jerry may be right. On the other hand, he may be wrong. This verdict may be nothing more than that jury stating that on the evidence presented to them by the prosecution, they were not willing to pronounce O.J. Simpson guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
We're going to Bill Lagatuda outside the courthouse.
Dan, when the verdict was read outside the courthouse in the street, which looks like a crowd gathered for a Rose Bowl parade, there was a crowd, a cheer in the crowd that went up, a very loud cheer. There were many O.J. Simpson supporters out here. A cheer when the verdict came. By the way, O.J. Simpson will be taken to a sheriff's substation. There are about a dozen of them here in Los Angeles, where he will be processed and released there, rather than have him come out and meet the crowd here. I don't think that, given the logistics of it, it would be smart to have him step outside here. Ron Goldman's father, whose face betrayed so much emotion when that verdict was read in the courtroom, left the building just a few minutes ago, muttering under his breath, "Murderer, murderer, murderer." Dan?
Let's replay the moment when the verdict was made known.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action.
Well, as you saw, O.J. Simpson and his defense team celebrate. And as you got a glimpse of and heard, the relatives of the victims weep and then leave the courtroom. Not guilty, O.J. Simpson. He walks from the court free. Let's go to Ruth Jones. Ruth, your reaction to the verdict.
Well, unfortunately, I think it is consistent with, in this case, the traditional wisdom. It was always very hard to conceive of a jury sending a man to jail for the rest of his life in 2 hours or 3 hours deliberation. However, I hope people don't take from this verdict any kind of message on race or domestic violence or gender. This was the jury's decision that the prosecution didn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Bill Whitaker was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Bill?
Dan, I'm not sure that I can express the emotion that filled that courtroom when that verdict was read. It really did hit like a thunderbolt. The Goldman family just broke down into tears. They were hugging each other. They were crying. They were sobbing. The Brown family just looked stunned. For a moment, they didn't say anything. They just sat and looked in disbelief. Fred Goldman, the father of murder victim Ron Goldman, just looked around the courtroom as though he just couldn't believe what he had just heard. On the other hand, across the courtroom, the family of O.J. Simpson was hugging and smiling. They stood up. They were grabbing each other. It was an unbelievable experience inside that courtroom. I will tell you, as the jury stood to leave, usually in the courtroom, we all stand. The gallery stands as the jury files out. One of the Brown family members said, "I'm not going to stand for this group of people," and they just sat in their seats. The Goldman family got up and rushed out of the courtroom, holding on to each other, still sobbing. The emotion just filled the courtroom in a way that just really is something I haven't seen before. Dan?
Did you see the jury look at O.J. Simpson?
They did not. They did not. And as we were saying before, people were reading into that perhaps they had bad news for O.J. Simpson. But again, this morning, they did not look at him when they came in. They kept their eyes averted. They were looking down. They looked at each other. Some of them even took little glances over at the gallery. But again, when the verdict was being read, they did not look at O.J. Simpson. So this jury has been poker-faced from day one, and they go out the same way.
Laurie Levinson, you heard Ruth Jones say a moment ago that she hopes, as a former prosecutor, current law professor, that the American public does not take this case as indicative of, one, a case being decided on racial lines, I'm paraphrasing here, but roughly, and two, doesn't take it as a rejection of the prosecution's case of spousal abuse, that the general proposition that spousal abuse is a great problem. But my question is, do you think, as a practical matter, that's the way it will be viewed in the criminal justice system, never mind with the public at large?
Well, you know, Chris Darden, in his closing, urged calm, and this is probably the moment for it. Within the justice system, we already have movement towards reform. And for the people who don't like this verdict, they may move towards those types of reforms, whether it be throwing the cameras out of the courtroom, going to non-unanimous juries, changing the composition of the juries. If the people didn't like these verdicts, I think there will be a push for changes.
Let's go back outside the courthouse itself and Bill Lagatuda. Well, perhaps not at the moment. This being live television, things happen. To err is to human. To really foul up, you need computers and satellites. Ted Wells, what about what Ruth Jones said about let's don't take this as a comment on what role race plays in the criminal justice system, nor take it as a too broad a comment on a prosecution line of spousal abuse?
I agree with what Ruth Jones said. Many of us have spent a lot of time talking about the comment during Johnny Cochran's summation to the effect that the jury should send a message to the community. But if you take a step back and realize that Johnny Cochran and Barry Shank talked to those jurors for over 2 days, and many of their arguments were very powerful in terms of deficiencies in the prosecutor's case. No one can really say until we talk to the jurors whether or not they based their verdict on a lack of evidence or whether they based their verdict in an effort to send some type of message. As I said a minute ago in response to Jerry Lefcourt, we really don't know what this jury was trying to say other than the simple fact that O.J. Simpson's guilt was not proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
Let's try Bill Lagatuda once again outside the courthouse. Bill?
Sorry, Dan, we're just catching our breaths here, and we have some pictures that were made at the moment that the verdict was announced as reacted to by the people in the street in front of the courthouse.
I have no idea.
Several thousand who had gathered. This is the atmosphere out front, people listening to the television sets and radios, and here comes the verdict. Most of these people, many of them indeed, are supporters of O.J. Simpson, carrying signs and placards saying, "Free O.J., free the juice." And this is what happened when they heard the announcement from the courtroom.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, by the defendant Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of
Shouts of joy from supporters of O.J. Simpson outside the county courthouse in downtown Los Angeles just a few moments ago. Dan?
Let's go to Ann Cole, jury consultant. Ann, you've been with us all through this trial. I know from what you said on the air and what we talked about before that you're surprised by the verdict. Tell us your reaction now.
I'm quite surprised. I find that the jurors' body behavior and their verdict don't seem to be consistent. Clearly, like everyone else, I'd like to talk to the jurors and find out what was their reasoning. Were they made afraid of what a consequence of a guilty verdict would be? And the not guilty verdict is a fear verdict. Were they simply unconvinced by the prosecutors and they felt that their case was not proven, although they may have some lingering suspicions about what really happened out there in Bundy? Or did they believe that this was a complete police frame-up? We'll never know until we get to talk to them.
Ruth Jones, if you're a prosecutor and you must now talk to the relatives of the victims who say, well, if he didn't do it, who did? What do you say to them? What is Marcia Clark, Chris Darden, and the others, the district attorney in Los Angeles, going to say to the relatives of the victims who say, listen, they're two young people who were brutally murdered. Somebody did it.
Right, and I'm not sure, based on the statements certainly that the Goldman family have made, if they will be asking the prosecution and the police to look to anyone else. This is one of the most difficult moments as a prosecutor, to try to explain to the victim's family that indeed, in a sense, justice was served. The evidence was presented to the jury, and you have to accept that verdict. But I think the Goldman family and certainly the Brown family, they will have a civil suit, so perhaps they can seek to pursue justice to the extent that they believe that they need justice from a different verdict. But there really is nothing you can say to them at this point.
Jerry Lefcourt, for anyone who says, quote, listen, it was money and his race that got him to walk, unquote, what say you?
Well, you know, I tell you, I have to sort of lean to those kinds of things because there's nobody in this country without all of those individual expert defense lawyers, the Barry Shack and the Peter Neufeld and the science issues and all those experts that really could have created the kinds of things that would say to jurors who were predisposed because of the racial issue to say, I have a reasonable doubt. There has never been the kind of cross-examination of crime scene experts, of criminalists. There has never been the kind of expert testimony brought to a case like there really has to this one. And I don't think that the average defendant in this country who is poor would have any chance of pulling this off, really. I mean, I've been a public defender. I know what resources there are. They're dwindling. Nobody supports public defenders, no legislatures. It's not popular. And so this really is a product of a lot of money and also a very, very important witness, Mark Furman, because the defense concentrated on him. They called all those witnesses. I don't know how you can remove race from this, because when you join the number of defense witnesses on racial issues and that impassioned plea by the chief defense lawyer, the ones that the jurors look to, you can't disregard the race issue. So money and race were crucial to this verdict.
The jurors are in this bus. This is a live high shot. The jurors being transported in this bus. They told the judge they didn't want to talk to the attorneys and they didn't want to talk to anyone in the press. Sometimes that changes after jurors get out of the courtroom, and sometimes it doesn't. We'll have to see in the case of this jury. In the meantime, O.J. Simpson is in the process of being released. He is free and cannot be retried in any criminal court on this case. The Goldman family is suing him in a civil case. What the disposition of that will be, well, it will take many months, if not years, to find out. Ted Wells, now you cautioned earlier about making any decision about this, any opinion about this verdict that played, I think you said, too heavily on race.
Well, when you focus on money, I think you tend to forget the fact that in order to get an acquittal in an American courtroom, be the defendant black or white, or be the jury black or white, you need facts sufficient to create reasonable doubt. And in this case, we saw something that I have not seen in my 20 years of practice, and that is a prosecutor standing up in front of a jury and saying that a key police investigator was a perjurer, was a racist, shouldn't even exist on the planet Earth. That was unprecedented. And those are facts. Johnny Cochran and the defense team didn't buy that testimony. They did not invent it. That was something that happened in this case. Similarly, we have a situation where there were compelling arguments that somebody may have planted blood on the sock, that somebody may have planted blood on the gate. Now, maybe what actually happened is the police did not find those blood samples immediately, and they paid a price for it. But there was a lot of evidence based solely on the facts, nothing to do with race, from which a jury could have concluded that the prosecution did not prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Let me take care of a piece of business here. We try to be accurate as well as fair in our reporting. Sometimes, particularly in live situations, we miss. I'm now told that we made a mistake. When we described that bus leaving from the courthouse, we had been told that the bus carried the jury. We're now told that this bus 427 is transporting O.J. Simpson away from the courthouse. And so mark it, we were in error, apparently. We're now told this bus is carrying O.J. Simpson on his way to freedom. He is, as of this moment, a free person. The jury has spoken, not guilty. Let's go to Art Rascone, CBS News correspondent in Miami with University of Miami Law School students. Art, reaction?
Dan, here at this law school in the University of Miami, here in the lounge, we have prospectus future attorneys, both prosecutors and defense attorneys as well. And now we have the result of what they think about the verdict. And Clint, tell me, what did you think and why?
Well, first of all, I was very pleased about the verdict of O.J. Simpson today because, well, the reason is that with Detective Furman using those racial slurs, and also is that I saw the case turn into a big racial problem. I sort of thought of it as they were looking at it as black man dating white woman. And that is something that in America today that is really not ready is for interracial relationships. And I think that's really, really ignorant, you know. I think anybody should be able to date whoever that they want to date.
All right, Clint, thank you. Eric, let's move on to you quickly. You were not so happy with the verdict.
No, not at all. I think if the jury did make this a race issue, then I think that was wrong, because I don't think it was. And I think you can explain away a few pieces of evidence as coincidence, but when put all together, I just think it's hard that they could find the way they did.
Do you believe they should have spent some more time deliberating?
I think if they knew in their hearts that this is the way they were going to come out, then there's no reason to prolong it. Just don't think they came to the right conclusion.
All right, Eric, thank you very much. Interestingly enough, Dan, before the verdict was actually read, we took an informal, unscientific sampling here. 50% of those we spoke with believed that he was not guilty. Another 50% felt he was guilty. And those black law students in whom we spoke with as well, most of them, although personally feeling that he was not guilty, believed that he would be convicted. And we see here that he was not. Dan?
Let's check in with Bob Orr in Washington on the street. Bob?
Dan, just like as in the rest of the country, there was a palpable sense of tension here as the jury was about to announce its verdict. There were about 40 to 50 people gathered around a television, and when the acquittal verdicts were read, a thunderous cheer erupted on the street and some horns started honking. But I have to tell you, the opinions are not that universal. What was your reaction to the verdict?
I was completely astounded. I can't believe they found him not guilty. I think the decision was based on racial lines, certainly not on the evidence. All I can say is maybe all the blood clouded their judgment.
Let me just move past here and get a few other opinions. You were here at the time. What was your reaction when you heard that he was not guilty on all counts?
I was relieved. I don't think this was a race-related problem. I think this was a procedure problem. They failed to follow the proper procedures, and it ended up in an acquittal.
All right, thanks very much. Dan, in a very short time, 12 jurors reached a unanimous opinion here on the streets. It is still far from being unanimous. Back to you.
The bus, which we were told the second time around was carrying O.J. Simpson, has arrived at its destination, but the only thing we were able to see was an officer of the law of some description who got off of the bus. Ted Wells, it's inevitable. People are going to discuss race and this case. Taking your last comments before we went to the reaction in Miami and Washington to heart, what does this do to the widespread belief among African Americans, which was and is widespread, that, quote, a black person, especially a black man, can't get a fair shake in the criminal justice system, unquote?
Well, I'm not sure how much can be read into that either. Some blacks, I suspect, will take the position that O.J. Simpson was fortunate enough to have a number of African Americans on his jury, unlike many black defendants who have predominantly white juries. On the other hand, one can certainly read into this a message that the criminal justice system works, and perhaps the distrust that a number of African Americans have about the criminal justice system is not justified. But again, I just think it's very dangerous to try to read too many profound messages into this verdict beyond the fact that the prosecution did not prove its case.
And while we were talking, that live picture, of course, O.J. Simpson getting off the bus and going in to be processed out of the criminal justice system. But the second the jury said that he was not guilty, he became a free man. Not guilty on all counts. The verdict in the O.J. Simpson case, our CBS News live coverage. We'll be back with a lot more after these messages.
Then would you please poll the jurors?
If you have minor arthritis pain, then keep your eyes on this hand, and you'll see something really remarkable. A pain reliever that can turn up the heat on arthritis. Just minutes after applying ultra-strength Bengay, you can actually see the heat using thermographic photography. That's because ultra-strength Bengay is the strongest, most advanced Bengay ever, and the only one with the powerful heating relief of 3 pain relievers, and it'll last for hours. Try ultra-strength Bengay and turn up the heat on arthritis.
When gas pain, pressure, and bloating tie you in knots, don't make the antacid mistake. Take this little pill instead. Maximum Strength Phazine. There's more gas relief in one Phazine soft gel than in a whole bottle of regular Maalox. All this Maalox can't get rid of gas, but with the liquid medicine in just one Phazine soft gel, the gas is gone. Take Phazine, and the gas is gone.
I can't fall asleep.
I can't stay asleep. Try Nitol Quick Caps to fall asleep fast and get a good night's sleep. Get Nitol Quick Caps.
Nitol will help you get yours ease.
Denture wearers don't let anything keep you from getting close, especially denture odor. Get Polident. It's loaded with minty mouthwash ingredient. It controls denture odor and cleans tough stains in just 5 minutes. Get Polident fresh and granddaughter close.
I find you incredibly attractive. Sarah Taylor thought she'd found the perfect man, but she didn't find him.
You want to know everything. What do I know about you?
He found her. Nothing.
What are you doing in my apartment?
I was worried about you.
You've been stalking me right from the beginning.
Put the gun down.
I trusted you!
Never talk to strangers. Rated R. At theaters October 20th. You're on CBS.
On the next Real Stories.
Get your hands up. Okay? Hands up. Get your hands up.
In West Virginia, a citizen's tip leads officers to a motel drug bust.
I see you on the floor.
On the next Real Stories.
Tuesday at 7:30.
If you've been in an accident, your life and those of your loved ones have changed, possibly forever. The party responsible may already have a team of lawyers working against you. You need a team of professionals on your side. Goldberg, Persky, Jennings & White PC is big enough to take on insurance companies and large corporations, but not so big that we can't get to know you personally. Call Goldberg, Persky, Jennings & White PC at 1-800-LAW-81 for a free consultation. Put our team on your side.
Local victims of domestic abuse react to the verdict on Eyewitness News live at 5.
CBS News coverage of the O.J. Simpson case continues. From New York, here again is Dan Rather.
And a member of the victorious defense team for O.J. Simpson, Alan Dershowitz, who's a professor at Harvard Law School, an expert on appeals, but an expert on all facets of criminal law, is with us live from his office in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Professor Dershowitz, your reaction?
Well, a great relief. I'm happy not to have to write an additional appellate brief here, but I do want to emphasize this is not a time for joy. There are going to be no celebrations in my office. There are going to be no victory parties. There are two terribly mutilated victims in this case. There are motherless children. There is a man who spent a year and a half almost in prison. This is a time for reflection about the LAPD, about the fact that poor people in America don't have the opportunity to have the Dr. Lees and the Dr. Bodens challenge prosecutorially oriented laboratories. This is about a time to reflect on equality, on the fact that we have 12 jurors, 3 of whom are not members of O.J. Simpson's race, who quickly concluded that there was reasonable doubt in this case. This is a case which I think has real implications. We can learn from it. I think that the media frittered away an opportunity to learn larger issues by covering too much day-to-day this case and having too many commentators who were just evaluating the lawyers. Maybe this is a time to reflect now on the bigger issues of justice in America, and I hope we can learn some important lessons to make sure that crimes like this are solved and are solved fairly, and that the kind of racism that permeated the LAPD is eliminated, and that we can have fair and equal justice, not only for wealthy Americans who can afford it, but also for poor Americans who might be just as innocent, but who can't afford to challenge the prosecution's case in the way that we were able to.
These pictures, Professor Dershowitz, over which you are speaking, are from the men's central jail, where O.J. Simpson, in that now smaller white van, having been brought here, we believe, in the large bus, has been transferred to this van. All of this, of course, in the process of having him freed completely from the criminal justice system and out as a free, acquitted American. Professor Dershowitz, go ahead, please.
I'm looking forward to speaking to him. I know Johnny Cochran tried to reach me already, but the lines, as you can imagine, were full. I know O.J. Simpson wants to talk to all of his defense lawyers, and we want to talk to him. You know, when you visit somebody in prison, you shake hands with him by putting your hand over the glass. And when the verdict came down, I put my hand over the television set, kind of symbolically to shake hands with O.J. and to wish him well in his future life.
Professor Dershowitz, we're going to go back to Los Angeles in just a moment. Before I do so, I don't want to let pass your lecture, mini lecture though it was, to those of us in the press about what we should do and should not do. And I take that seriously. Give me a quick summation of what you think those in your profession, the law, should do about beginning with the answer to someone who says, with a look of incredulity on their face, "You call this justice," unquote. Your answer to that, and what does your profession learn out of this trial?
Well, I think we have to learn a great deal. I think we have to reevaluate the role of prosecutors and defense counsel. You know, the legal system imposes on us as defense counsel an obligation to find every weakness in the prosecution's case, to challenge every aspect of the evidence. That's what we call the adversary system. There are going to be questions raised about the zealousness, about the closing arguments of both sides, about how the media influenced the trial, about the length of the trial, about the sequestration of juries. I hope we can all learn together with an open mind and improve the system for all Americans. I don't want to cast fault only on either the prosecution or on the media. I think this is not a time for blame casting. This is a time to see what lessons we can learn, and I think there are large lessons that we can learn from this case, both for people who think that the verdict was just and for people who think it was unjust. You know, it's part of the American tradition that we doubt verdicts. You know, today, years later, people are still debating Sacco-Vanzetti, people are still debating the Hauptmann case, and people will probably continue to debate what the implications of this case are as well. But I'm relieved that this verdict has been rendered so quickly and so unanimously by this jury, and I hope that the people of L.A. will get back to the business of repair.
As we watch O.J. Simpson in the process of being freed from the criminal justice system, having been found not guilty as charged on all counts, let's go to Los Angeles. And our panel of Earl Hutchinson, a writer, Karen Grisby Bates from the Los Angeles Times, Gloria Molina, chairwoman from the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors, and Bill Handel, radio talk show host. First, Earl Hutchinson, your reaction to the verdict.
Okay, my reaction was this. I was not totally unsurprised about it. It could go either way. I made no prediction, but I have to say this. One thing that was said over and over again is we can't read too much into this. I keep hearing about the race card. I keep hearing about racism in the system. We know that. We certainly know about the LAPD, but I have to tell you, again, those African-American jurors and the white jurors and the Hispanic jurors were able to do one thing. They were able to bond. They were able to do a second thing, too. They were able to look at the case, and they were able to say, you simply did not prove your case. Remember one thing. They were able not only to look beyond, of course, just race and other issues, they were also able, and I think this is very appropriate, to look at the evidence, too. Look at the testimony. Was it convincing? Was it compelling? Obviously, the answer was no. So I think there is a very real danger in much of America saying, this is a race decision. The fact of the matter is the prosecution, simply by the standards within the American court system, did not prove its case.
Bill Handel?
Couple of thoughts. First of all, I'm happier that it was a unanimous verdict other than a hung jury based on racial grounds. And now I think what's going to happen is the case moves from the judicial system to the business schools for the study of the selling of the O.J. case. I don't think it's an accident that the jury didn't want to talk to the press, didn't want to talk to you, and kept their notebooks. I think you're going to see the selling of this case, the books, the pay-per-view, the interviews. Big money is going to be made out of the O.J. case in the next few years, and I just can't wait to see it.
Karen Griswold-Bates.
Well, I think it's hard then to draw any kind of inference from this right now for two reasons. A, because this trial was such a wild card aberration, and B, because it's way too early. But I'm dying to know why the jurors voted as they did. Someone who's been in and out of the courtroom for the last several weeks has said to me, you know, I suspect that we have 3 sets of jurors in there who all came to the same conclusion for different reasons. Some people just want to go home. Some people would like to have convicted, have liked to have convicted Simpson, but felt that there wasn't enough evidence, or the evidence that was presented wasn't credible enough. And some people honestly think that he didn't do it. So that you may have these different branches of thought coming together with the same final result, but we won't know until they talk.
Gloria Molina?
Well, I found it a surprising verdict. I think that there's going to continue to be a trial out in the community. People will be discussing this for a long, long time. But the jury has spoken. They have set O.J. free. And I think one thing that we can all agree on is the issue that L.A., we're grateful that it's over. And this is a trial that has cost us an awful lot of money as an L.A. County supervisor. And I hope that we will all trust and continue to trust in our jury system and its verdicts.
What you're looking at is a shot on the I-5. O.J. Simpson on the freeway now. On the freeway, not to freedom. He is free, having been found not guilty on all counts. Dominic Dunn, our special CBS News consultant and writer extraordinaire for Vanity Fair magazine, has been watching the trial from the beginning with a special seat inside the courtroom. What was it like inside the courtroom today, Dominic?
Dan, it was perhaps the most dramatic day since the beginning of this extraordinary odyssey that we have been on here in Los Angeles. There was such crying, such tears, such emotion. The prosecution lawyers arrived surrounded by bodyguards. Inside, before the verdict was given, Jason Simpson, O.J.'s son, was inconsolable. He was sobbing so hard. His sister Arnell was kneeling in front of him, trying to comfort him. His mother, Margarita, O.J.'s first wife, was there trying to comfort him. His mother, Eunice Simpson, was praying with her hands in a prayer position. To my right sat the Goldman family, the entire family, sobbing. Behind me sat the Brown family. When the verdict was read finally, it was a stunning surprise to most people in that courtroom. Absolutely stunning, as if they could not believe it. Anyone. Immediately afterwards, the lawyers went over and hugged O.J. There was much kissing. The Brown family left immediately, followed by the Goldman family. Kim Goldman, as she passed in front of me, leaving our road and turning into the aisle to leave, said, "Murderer, murderer," about Mr. Simpson.
Dominic Dunn. And as you've been talking, Dominic, I don't think you can see it. We've been watching O.J. Simpson move along the Los Angeles freeway. The I-5 was where he was a few minutes ago, in the van. For many people, this case came into their consciousness, really, with scenes of O.J. Simpson in his Bronco. That's right. With his friend driving on the Los Angeles freeway. Now, at least this phase of the case ends with his driving on the freeway in a van. in New York is Peter Neufeld, one of O.J. Simpson's attorneys who worked with Barry Schreck for the defense. He joins us here in our studio, our CBS studio. Your reaction, Peter Neufeld?
I'm incredibly relieved. We were hopeful from the beginning. We always thought that O.J. was innocent. We thought that it was very clear from the very beginning that the timeline made no sense. He couldn't have done it. His demeanor, his character was always inconsistent with guilt. The forensic evidence was fraught with problems from the very beginning, and I think that was one of the things that I was primarily involved in. And I think to this jury, first and foremost, I think one of their big concerns is that they had a bad faith prosecution. That they knew, as America found out during the course of these proceedings, that they put a police officer on the witness stand who they knew was a perjurer, who they knew was a racist, and who easily could have and did plant evidence in this case, and they never did anything to try and alert the public to this in advance, to pull that witness from the stand, and they hid the truth. And I think the jury resented that.
You mentioned the timeline. The trial's over. Now one can speak more candidly than one did before. During the trial, I never quite understood let's say roughly from 9:45 p.m. until just before 11 p.m. So far as I could make out, at the trial, O.J. Simpson's whereabouts were never accounted for. It wasn't the defense's necessity to account for that time. But am I wrong? Was that time ever accounted for? And where was O.J. Simpson during that time?
Well, I mean, during that time, O.J. made it very clear from some of the early phone calls he made to Reinhardt and others that he was getting ready to go to Chicago. He had been outside, he'd been packing, and he'd gotten his cellular phone from the car, and picked up several bags, did that kind of thing. But that's not the big issue here. It's not that end of the timeline, it's the other end of the timeline. And since the overwhelming evidence is that these murders occurred sometime around 10:40, 10:45 that night, there's just no way in the world that Mr. Simpson could have conducted those crimes and gotten back to his home in time and removed all the bloody clothes and the weapon and everything else. It just made absolutely no sense. You couldn't be in two places simultaneously, and the jury obviously agreed. One thing, I don't know if your viewers are aware of it, but what we heard this morning is this jury reached a verdict before it ever began its deliberations Monday morning, that when they went to court Monday morning, their bags were already packed. And there was no reason to even come in. So there really seems like there was no deliberations at all in this case.
Well, of course, the judge's instructions were that they weren't really to start deliberating until Monday morning. But one wants to underscore, I think everybody understands it, that there's no appealing this verdict. When a not guilty verdict comes in, there's no appeal. If it had been guilty, you and your colleagues for the defense would have had an appeal option to you.
Well, there's clearly no appeal for an acquittal, and that's one of the cornerstones of our Constitution. And I think that those people who feel that this trial may set back the criminal justice system because folks may seek less than a unanimous jury don't have a leg to stand on, because here you had a unanimous verdict reached immediately.
Jury left court.
Peter, I was just wondering, first of all, congratulations. I know how hard you all worked, but, you know, I can't help thinking that you and I both worked in public defenders' offices when we started out. How could the average... You represented me. Well, that's true, too. But how could the average American citizen, whether he be middle class or poor, ever really put together the kind of defense with you and Barry and all of the expert witnesses, the best in the country? How could anybody ever do this if they had to?
Well, you know, Jerry, I worked as a public defender for about 8 years before going into private practice, and I never cut corners in a single case. And every time I wanted to mount the best defense with the best experts on a particular subject matter anywhere in the country, I never had an impediment. And I think that creative lawyering is the best tool we all have, and money never stands in the way of that. It's just a question of being a zealous and loyal advocate for your client's interests and not letting anything stand in the way.
Let me come back to the moment. First go to Laurie Levinson in Los Angeles. Laurie, what about this, we'd have to classify it as an opinion by Peter Neufeld, that the jury actually didn't deliberate, that it came with his bags packed on Monday morning and already had his mind made up?
Well, first, let me also say congratulations to Peter, because I watched him in court day in and day out, and he really did a dynamite job. But in terms of this jury, I think it won't sit too well with people that there wasn't deliberations. There was a lot of evidence. They lived through 9 months of it, so maybe along the way they said there has to be something more. By the time they got in there, they said, we don't have it, so we're ready to acquit. But it's not the type of deliberations people expected. I suspect what this case came down to is a type of reasonable doubt, and whether all the jurors agreed on what it was, we don't know, but that's the standard.
Peter Neufeld, go ahead.
I just think it's more than that, Laurie, and thank you very much. It's odd. This is actually the first time I've talked to anybody on television since the trial began. I had a personal position on that. But, you know, it seems to me that what really happened here is that this jury was very angry. Obviously, they wouldn't talk to the court, they wouldn't talk to the parties, they wouldn't talk to the press. They did not enjoy the experience. But I think there's no question in my mind from what I heard and what I saw that there's a lot of resentment toward the prosecution's case and for putting on Furman in the first place and not doing something about that. And I think there's a certain resentment toward the court and the way they were treated by Judge Ito throughout these proceedings. I don't think they have good feelings about the judge.
Laurie Levinson said congratulations to you, and so did Jerry Lefcourt. How do you feel? Surely you said you felt relieved. You have to feel a sense of our side won, yes. But is there or is there not a part of you that says, you know, I do feel for the families of the victims, and I still would like to know who killed those people?
Oh, I think there's no question. Not only do I feel that way, there's no question that Mr. Simpson feels that way. We all do. There's a tremendous pain on the part of the Goldman family and Nicole Brown's family. But frankly, their anger should not be directed at Mr. Simpson now or Johnny Cochran for what he said or what anybody else said from the defense. Their anger should be at the prosecution, because the prosecution, in bad faith from the very beginning, allowed certain witnesses to take the stand when they knew they were committing perjury. And for the prosecution to go embark on that kind of case and not pursue other leads and allow perjurious testimony to rule the day is a big mistake and warrants the criticism of the Goldman family.
Let's see if we can pick up the sound of the Defense News Conference live from Los Angeles. Apparently not quite ready to start, and in the meantime, we'll pass along this. Dateline Washington, President Clinton said today the verdict of the jury in the Simpson trial must be respected and that Americans' thoughts and prayers should be with the families of the victims. O.J. Simpson along the freeway to freedom. And our friends at CBS in Los Angeles say that it looks like O.J. Simpson is heading home to his Rockingham house. Let's pick up the sound from the Defense News Conference.
Howard Harris.
Sean Chapman.
Gerald Ullman.
Carl Douglas.
Johnny Cochran.
Lee Bailey.
Robert Shapiro.
Bob Blazier, Barry Scheck, and Peter Neufeld.
Shirley Baker.
Jason Simpson.
Arnell Simpson.
Eunice Durden Simpson. Carmelita Simpson Durio.
That's it.
Joella Demetrius.
Thank you all very much for coming today. First, I want to thank God for this verdict. He always directs our paths, and he's worthy to be praised. And at the outset, Jason Simpson, the eldest male child of O.J. Simpson, will read a statement from Mr. Simpson and from the family.
I want to echo that. Me and my family want to thank God, without whom I don't know where we'd be. He's truly
amazing.
Amazing. A statement from my father. A statement from my father. I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over. My first obligation is to my young children, who will be raised the way that Nicole and I had always planned. My second obligation is to my family and to those friends who never wavered in their support. But when things have settled a bit, I will pursue, as my primary goal in life, the killer or killers who slaughtered Nicole and Mr. Goldman. They are out there somewhere. Whatever it takes to identify them and bring them in, I'll provide somehow. I can only hope that someday, despite every prejudicial thing that has been said about me publicly, both in and out of the courtroom, people will come to understand and believe that I would not, could not, and did not kill anyone. My father will have more to say at a later time.
Thank you, Jason, and from the family. We will take questions. I'll just make a brief statement, then we'll take questions thereafter. On behalf of the entire team, I'd just like to say how grateful we are for this verdict, because we think this verdict bespeaks justice. We never wavered in our faith. We were always optimistic, and that optimism proved right. I'd like to just individually thank all of the team members. Everybody on this team played a great, great part in this victory. There's no question about it. We hung together in the tough times. We always saw this day coming, and now that it's here, we feel really good about it. I pay particular tribute today to Joel and Demetrius, the lady over my right shoulder, who helped us pick this jury. We lost 10 jurors, but yet we still had 12 who we felt did the right thing. The other two people who aren't present that I'd like to thank are Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, who couldn't make it back from New York, but they're in Neufeld's living room today watching this, and we send our love and regards to them. Mr. Simpson, needless to say, is ecstatic, wants to get on with his life, and we are all ecstatic, so we'll take your questions.
Johnny, a lot of people are already saying that this was a case in which race transcended the facts, overcame the facts. Could you comment on that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question, Linda. If you watch this trial, if you watch the arguments, then you know this idea of any jury nullification or the idea we didn't have the facts is preposterous. In the opening part of my argument, through a strategy we devised with Lee Bailey, we said that if we could shatter the prosecution's timeline so that O.J. Simpson couldn't have committed this crime, that there would be a reasonable doubt. That's even before we ever got to the socks, the glove, and Furman or anything else. So these pundits who make those statements don't know what they're talking about. They haven't tried cases. They don't know what they're talking about. This was a case based upon the evidence. And so that's all we were saying. There was a reasonable doubt. And when you see a trial that lasts 9 months, where the jury takes this period of time, they have gone to what we said. And if you look at that timeline, O.J. Simpson could not, did not, would not have committed this crime. And I think that becomes very clear. So I think that's a very appropriate question.
Johnny, was there a point during the summation, during your closing argument, that you were looking in the eyes of the jury and you knew something, was telling you something, that you were winning?
Well, it's always hard to say, Joe, but I mean, I felt that they were very attentive. For a tired jury, they were very attentive. And then one of the jurors got up and went out, and when she came back, she'd been crying. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And then they all started, a lot of them took notes who hadn't been taking notes before. And I could contrast that with the other arguments. They took a lot of notes, and I felt that was probably important.
Johnny, the jurors went out for 4 hours. Right before this trial, there seemed to be a lot of sadness among the Simpson family. Did you prepare O.J. Simpson for a guilty verdict?
You know, that's a tough question. We never talked about a guilty verdict, and that would have been our fault. But we were so optimistic. We really believed in this case and in O.J. Simpson. And we talked only, even yesterday, when I got back to town last night, I talked to O.J. Simpson last night at 10 o'clock, and he could only talk about going home and seeing his children.
But with the Park testimony, when they asked to see the Park testimony, did you think there was a possibility for a guilty verdict?
Well, you know, what we thought was, you know, we've been around a long time, and what we thought was this, that 1 or 2 jurors had a question about the timeline. And I talked to Carl about 5 times yesterday in a row from where I was, and I wanted to know where they stopped, what they heard. They heard, among other things, that Cato Kalin was seen about 10:49, maybe 3 or 4 minutes after those knocks, just like I read in the transcript. It wasn't 10:52 or 10:53 like Marcia wanted to push it back in her timeline. And I felt good about that. So I felt that when you have the rereads are very confusing. You have the rereads, those who have a problem then say, okay, I've heard enough. And they go back in and do their job.
Johnny, this is a question for you, or
Okay,
perhaps
sure,
one of the members of the family. I wondered what Mr. Simpson is going to do today, now that he's an ex-defendant, where he's going and where he's...
I don't think we can really talk about that because for security concerns, Jeffrey. But he's going to start his life all over again.
And what are his short-term plans, or is he going to stay in Los Angeles, or?
I think he's going to probably address all these things himself soon.
Yes, Mr. Cochran, you have said publicly that you believe race plays a role in everything. I'd like to know what role race played in this trial.
Well, what I said before, Jim, was that race plays a part of everything in America. And we need to understand that. And then we stop ducking and dodging from that, we'll be better off. Now, basically, in this case, I think that from a standpoint of race, it was introduced by this witness, Furman. this stuff about playing a race card is preposterous. It would malpractice if a man has racist views in a case and a lawyer doesn't pursue that. Anybody who says that doesn't know how to try cases, doesn't know anything about anything. So you have to pursue it because that's your job. So they introduced Furman, and then we dealt with it. But we choose to call it the credibility card. I mean, we pursued his credibility. Do you know that on that jury instruction, a witness willfully false in one material part can be distrusted in others? For all we know, they could have knocked out all of Furman's and Van Adder's testimony. So that's the answer to that. I mean, so I think it became very apparent because they brought him. He was their witness. We didn't call him.
Johnny, in Jason's opening statement, he said that O.J. wanted to pursue the killer or killers in these murders once he gets out. Does he offer any idea or ideas as to who this could be?
I'm sure we'll all talk about that, and I'm sure he has some strong ideas, and we'll be talking about that, and you'll probably hear more about that, Pat, in the days to come.
With all due respect to the attorneys, I'd prefer hearing from some family members, if I may, particularly the women to my right. What was the last 24 hours like for you? Shirley, Carmelita, Arnell, Mrs. Simpson?
We were prayerful.
Yeah.
We were very prayerful, but we were on an emotional roller coaster. And when one would break down, the other ones would come together and lift them up, and then the next one would break down. So we were just all there for each other.
Mrs. Simpson?
Well, I was always in prayer. I knew that my son was innocent. And I had the support of so many people all over the world. And I know that prayer of the righteous prevaileth much. And I believed in that. And so therefore, that's why I kept the faith. And I had confidence in his representative. Thank you.
Arnell, if I may?
Yesterday was a difficult day, but there was a peacefulness, a calmness for myself, and I know with my other family members. We're a very strong family, and we stick together, and we were very prayerful, and we just knew that no matter what was going to happen, that God was going to take care of us. And we didn't really go one way or the other, but we just knew that God was going to take care of us, and just knowing that we would get through it.
Shirley?
What we knew, when you know that someone is innocent, you are able to hold your head up high, and that's the one thing that our family has tried to do during this whole trial, is to carry ourselves with great dignity and to let the justice system do what it has to do. We knew O.J. was innocent, and we had all the confidence in the world and the team that was put together, and we're just thankful to them, to O.J., to all of you, to all the people that's been so nice to us. We want you guys to know that we really appreciate the way that you have responded to us in the good and bad times, and we want to thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, I just feel like, you know, for so many months you've been asking me, how do I feel? And I tell you, I just feel like standing on top of this table and dancing a jig, and I just want to thank you guys.
Yes, Johnny, do you see this verdict returned as any referendum on the LAPD?
No, I don't want to read a lot of things into the verdict. I mean, I think, and I take this opportunity to compliment the district attorney's office. They fought very, very hard. This was a real heck of a trial, believe you me. You saw lawyers go at it on both sides. It's hard to say because we haven't talked to the jurors. I do believe that there were credibility problems with members of the LAPD, some who testified in this case, and I believe that probably has had some effect. And I think we saw some other things too, and I hope that out of this trial, we always look for something positive. I hope that the coroner's office will get their act together. Citizens of LA County should demand that. Hope the LAPD lab will do what's necessary to get up to speed. We deserve better. I hope that the investigators will do better jobs in future cases. I hope they'll abide by the state law. If the state law says call the coroner immediately, call the coroner immediately. Don't wait 10 hours. And I think there's a lot of things we learned in this case.
I'd like to direct this question to Shirley Baker and Arnell Simpson. There are two small children involved in this matter who are currently in the guardianship of a family that believes that O.J. Simpson killed the mother of those children. How are you going to put this family back together?
With God and faith. We got to take it one day at a time. And there's no answers because so much has happened. There's just a lot of mending and healing that needs to take place there. And for me to answer, I can't really answer that question because we just really have to take it one day at a time. But we'll do the best that we can. Well, I don't know. I don't know. When we get to that, we'll deal with it.
I think you should always remember, though, you have two families, the Brown family and the Simpson family, and we are two families, and we have two children that we love, and we're going to do what we can, the very best for the children.
Johnny, I want to ask you what you make of the jury's behavior over the past couple of days, and especially today. They've refused to talk to the lawyers. They don't want to explain their verdict to the public. They came to court today dressed in exercise wear, very casually, after we've seen them for 8 months dressed in suits to come to court. Were they trying to send a message? Were they being contemptuous of the proceedings at all?
I don't think so. I think they knew they were going to go home today, Sally. I think they knew yesterday they had to wait one more day. I think Judge Ito had them all packed, so I'm sure their wonderful clothes that we saw during this trial were all packed away. I think they're a very respectful jury. They were very professional. As all of you reported yesterday, you could not tell on their faces how they had voted. They were very professional. I wasn't here yesterday, and I looked for different things. I could tell today. I could tell today it was going to be all right for us, I felt.
You'll try to talk with them?
I would love to, somewhere down the road, talk to them because they've done a really important task here. I would like to do that.
Johnny, there were many yesterday, and no doubt there will be many today, who are concerned about the rapidity with which the jury came to its decision. There are those who say it appears as if it's impossible, that they hadn't either reached a determination on their own, as the judges said not to do before they were supposed to, or perhaps had talked to one another, that it seems as if it just isn't possible to have reviewed this much material in this short a period of time.
What I think, and maybe some of my colleagues will want to respond to this, what I think is this. When they went out on Friday, you remember that I was at the podium when they had a foreperson already. I think this jury had a sense of whom they respected, and in fact, Tracy Kennedy, one of our former jurors, said last night that they always respected juror number one, and so that probably wasn't a hard decision for them. I believe that based upon having participated in the arguments, that this jury felt the prosecution hadn't proven this case, and when ultimately you talk to them, that's going to be where they came down. If you didn't believe the timeline, if you didn't believe that O.J. Simpson had enough time to commit this crime, that he couldn't go upstairs, change clothes, bathe, throw away all the clothes, the gun, the knife, the weapon, the shoes, and all that stuff, Ms. Clark gave him 5 minutes to do all that. If you think about that reasonably, and then tie that into the circumstantial evidence thing, is that reasonable? I mean, who in America, I mean, you get caught up in all these facts, but you got to look at what the law is. So if they made that determination, it didn't take very long. And if one or two people said, well, let's hear what Alan Park has to say on the timing, then you have a verdict.
So you went on the timeline, not on Mark Furman.
Well, I haven't talked to him yet, but I think it may be a combination of both. I don't know.
Johnny, one of the interpretations of this case is going to be that if you are rich in America, you can get a good outcome. But if you are poor, and then the justice system will just run over you. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I'd like to let one of my brethren or sisters answer that question. Bobby Blazer, Bob, Shabir, anyone?
It's an interesting concept, and there's a lot of truth to that. That unfortunately, in most places in this country, people who do not have adequate funds cannot properly defend themselves. But it worked both ways in this case. In this case, our small group of lawyers that were put together from June the 14th were up against the most intensive investigation probably in the history of criminal justice. Not only did the Los Angeles Police Department participate in this, the Chicago Police Department, the FBI, Interpol. They brought in DAs from 2 different jurisdictions, as well as 40 to 50 DAs. They had upwards of 100 officers at any one time investigating this case. And if we did not have adequate resources, we wouldn't have been able to come close to present all the crucial evidence
As the
that
defense
had to be shown. If only
attorneys
this
and the
case
members of the family
had
continue with their
proceeded
news conference, we pick up O.J. Simpson nearing his home on Rockingham. David Horowitz of CBS owned and operated station KCBS TV is on the outside of Simpson's home. Bob Turr is in the KCBS TV helicopter above this scene, and let's switch now live to Bob Turr in the chopper.
Go forward, get into position, get position in the house. Get into position in the house, Larry. We saw a white Bronco.
O.J. Simpson back at the Rockingham house, which has become world famous.
That's right. Just about a minute from his house, a white Bronco drove alongside for just a short time and was pulled off by LAPD officers, but he's getting an escort to the house. He's just about home, and he's coming up on the Rockingham side. That infamous gate, going in the infamous gate that Alan Park talked about, into his driveway. And this is where it gets tricky, where I got to do all these camera controls and try to look good. Well, we saw family members, a lot of children here earlier. And there's a baby, and there's a photographer. And there's the van door opening.
They're coming around the barricade, and he's going to probably go in the other gate. He is. He's going in the Rockingham gate. He's going in the Rockingham gate. Yes.
O.J. Simpson has been giving the thumbs up sign to people along the way as he drove home to his Rockingham home, where he has now arrived.
He's going in that gate.
Hugs. Long hugs with family and friends. This is the first time O.J. Simpson has been here since February 12, 1995. That was when the jury visited.
That looks like A.C. Cowlings.
And Jerry Lefcourt points out that one of those hugs, the last one, looked like it was A.C. Cowlings.
All right, they're opening up the front gates now, Bob.
His longtime friend in football, in and out, and who was in the Bronco with him during that well-known chase. O.J. Simpson returns home a free man, not guilty on all counts. The jury has spoken. The jury of 12 came in quickly. After very short deliberations in part of one day. Peter Neufeld, who's with us in our CBS studio today, says that it's his opinion that the jury actually did not deliberate much, if any, on Monday. That they had listened to this trial all the way through and had come to the conclusion that there was not enough evidence, at least, to convict O.J. Simpson. He is not guilty. And under the American system, one cannot say too often. When one goes to trial, a jury hears the case and renders a verdict of not guilty. That's it. Peter Neufeld?
I was saying you have Gary Randa, who's the son of Kathy Randa there. Kathy is O.J.'s lifelong assistant. And Bob Kardashian, who was, again, carrying his bags into the house, fulfilling a familiar role. No, I think it's a great moment. It's long overdue. We talked about the victims' families. There's no question that we all suffer for them. But Mr. Simpson, who walks out of this courtroom, an innocent man, also suffered, we believe unjustly, for more than a year during the pendency of this litigation.
Peter Neufeld, you were saying that you thought the jury had a very bad reaction to Marcia Clark. On what do you base that?
Well, I mean, one of the problems that Ms. Clark had is once the defense started putting on its case, she was no longer the principled prosecutor representing all the people. She became a very sort of brittle advocate for a cause. And every witness who was put up there by the defense, especially experts, she would go after them with a vengeance. And you could just see the expressions on the jurors' faces. They didn't like it. She was very disrespectful to most of these people, and it didn't work. As recently as about a week ago, when we were simply dealing with a stipulation over a syringe, she began to, raise silly complaints, and all the jurors started shaking their heads. They resented her for it. They didn't like her, treating people that way. They didn't like her being such a biased advocate. It's not the role of a prosecutor. And I think that's in the verdict.
We're about to go to the prosecution news conference. What you're watching here is a live picture of, well, you were, Peter Neufeld in our studio, and O.J. Simpson's relieved return to his home at Rockingham. And now we're going to go to the prosecution news conference. Gil Garcetti, the District Attorney of Los Angeles.
I'm going to ask everyone who is watching, who's listening to this, to pause for a moment. Remember why we're here. We're here for Ron, we're here for Nicole, and we're here for every other victim of violent crime. Our job is to seek justice. This case was fought as a battle for victims of domestic violence. We hope this verdict does not discourage victims who are out there throughout our communities, throughout this country, from seeking help. I know there are women especially who are right this very moment living in fear, living in violence. We're asking you to reach out for help. There is new help out there. Think of yourself. Think of the children who are in the house too. Don't wait. If you wait, it could be too late. We are, all of us, profoundly disappointed with the verdict. We want to hear from the jurors before we make any other comments concerning their decision today. But it was clear, at least it is to me, and I think other members of the prosecution team, that this was an emotional trial, and apparently their decision was based on emotion that overcame the reason. Certainly we have received calls and letters from all over the country praising the efforts of the prosecution. This was done no matter what verdict was going to be reached. We had many men and women throughout the country call and thank us for the efforts, many in tears. I am proud of every member of my staff, but there are particular people who made sacrifices. To the Goldmans and to the Browns, we cried with you. We shared energy, and as Chris said, during the most difficult times, we looked at you, and you gave us all strength, tremendous strength. We will never know the loss, really the pain of your loss. We tried as diligently, as hard, as professionally as we could to seek justice in this case. My thanks go to all the law enforcement agencies that assisted us. Los Angeles Police Department, obviously, the FBI, the Chicago Police Department, Department of Justice. But I think most particularly, I still, myself as the district attorney, want to thank the two lead investigators in the case, Phil Van Adder and Tom Lang. Los Angeles should be grateful for the professional job and loyalty that they've given over several decades. There are a couple companies that gave pro bono services to us. Absolutely first class. Decision Quest assisted us with many things. Many of you saw the pyramid. That was their idea. They did all of this. They invested pro bono nearly $1 million, their own, to help us seek justice. Cognitech also helped us. There were many others who helped. We had restaurants and others who were helping with the staff. I want to thank, too, every member of my office. They helped us. They don't have their name out in front, but they helped us. And more importantly, they helped every day with all the Rons and all the Nicoles that we handle every day. This has been one case, it's been an important case, but literally we have thousands of these cases. Finally, to our team, to our law clerks, who really worked so hard. These were students in law school who gave up so much to work with us. To the new prosecutors who joined our team, who took and passed the bar and became deputy DAs, and they gave their all. To the support staff from Patty Joe, to everyone else involved, our victim witness people, certainly to the media relations, special thanks to Suzanne Childs. Suzanne worked the 7 days a week. As you know, she's a lawyer, former deputy district attorney, as well as a journalist. She made your life, the journalists, easier, made our lives easier too. Our investigators, our Bureau of Investigation, goes unheralded, but they did fabulous work. Especially Gary Schramm and Mike Armstrong and several others. They were there whenever we needed them, whenever the families needed them. They were there. Finally, of course, we have the lawyers that you saw in court. Let me thank them because they did a first-class job. To Bill Hodgman, you know Bill, he managed the unmanageable, but he did it. To Alan Yokelson, to Sherry Lewis, to Hank Goldberg, to Brian Kelberg, to Lisa Kahn, to Rock Harmon, Woody Clark, and Scott Gordon. Every person here gave their all. It was a professional effort seeking justice. We had, I perhaps should give thanks to Woody and Rock's bosses, the district attorneys of San Diego and Alameda County. They helped when we needed the help, and again, it was a first-class effort. Of course, lastly, to Chris and to Marcia. None of you will ever know the personal sacrifices everyone here made. None of you will know, too, the sacrifices that the families of this team made. They didn't see their husbands or their wives, the fathers and their mothers, for 16 months. I think on behalf of every citizen who has been looking at this case in an objective way, I think they want me to say thank you. And I am saying thank you. And let me end by saying we deserve to be proud of the effort that we made in this case. I am very proud of the total effort made in this case. We stand here in front of you with our heads held high because we did everything professionally possible to seek the justice in this case. I'm going to ask Marcia and then Chris and then Bill if they want to make any comments or thank you. Now would be the appropriate time to do it. We will then, when they finish, address a few of your questions. But I will also add that because we've not had the opportunity to hear from the jury, they've indicated they're not interested in talking to any of the lawyers. Maybe they'll talk to you. We will withhold further comment for the rest of the day. But let me give Marcia an opportunity to say thanks.
I first want to extend my thanks to the families of the victims, to the Goldmans and to the Browns. Their strength, their dignity, and their support throughout this trial have been tremendous and a tremendous source of inspiration and strength to all of us. My sympathy and my love go out to all of them. And then I'd like to thank the members of our team. You're wonderful. You're wonderful. You've given everything. You've given your all. throughout all of it. We couldn't have done any of it without you. You've done a beautiful job. Please don't let this make you lose faith in our system. Please don't let this deter you from doing a job you're so well qualified to do. You're all wonderful. You can make it go right, and you'll have a chance to do it again. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I thank my partners, all of you. You're just fantastic. I can't tell you how fantastic. No one here has spared any effort. Everyone here has put in 110%, given their all for everyone, for justice, for the families of the victims, in the effort to see that the lives of Ron and Nicole were not thrown away. It was a dignified fight. It showed great courage, great integrity, great moral strength. And we have every reason to be proud of every single one of them, and we are. Thank you.
I never expected I would be here in this time and in this place and in this position. If there was anything that ever motivated me throughout the trial, it was the idea, the notion that one day I'd have to turn into the Goldmans and with the realization that he had been acquitted. But that is the verdict, that's the jury's position, that's their voice, and I accept that verdict. We came here in search of justice. You will have to be the judges, I expect, as to whether or not any of us found it today. But I'm not bitter, and I'm not angry. But I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have
And exhausted and distraught, Tris Darden leaves the room. Bill Hodgman
Please give us a moment.
speaks.
I guess I'm always been referred to as the calm one, but it is very, it's very difficult for any of us to speak without great emotion today. The verdict comes as a great disappointment, and I want to tell everyone here, I want to tell everyone in this county, and I want to tell everyone in this country that you can be proud to the hilt of the effort made by the prosecution team in this case. This was a classic team effort. None of us, take all the credit, and all of us share in the disappointing verdict today. I've been involved in a number of long or epic trials over time, and I have never seen anyone work so hard in behalf of the people as the team that we had in this case. And that goes from investigator to law clerk to stand-up attorney in the courtroom to research attorney. Every single person here on this team sacrificed greatly to try to bring the Browns and the Goldmans justice, and to bring justice to the county and for everyone. We won't forget Ron and Nicole. We won't forget them ever. And we may have to carry on the fight in their names in a different way after this. But for the Browns and the Goldmans, we're not going to give up. And for Ron and Nicole, we'll never forget you, ever. Thank you.
If I might, just to clear the record, too, I left out a couple thank yous. Daryl Mavis, thanks, Daryl. and certainly to my executive staff, my Chief Deputy Sandy Butita and Frank Sunstead, the entire staff. I mean, this truly was a team effort. And I said one last time before you take your questions, I've been in the office 27 years. I am extremely proud, and every citizen in this county, perhaps even this country, should be proud of the professional effort that was made here. We'll take a few of your questions.
Is the Simpson matter over, or would you consider any possible federal charges, and are there any?
It's over from our viewpoint.
Is this investigation now going to be reopened from square one, the whole murder investigation?
Are you talking about this case? The lights just went out. I stand in front of you. We all stand in front of you with the belief that the evidence was there. This was not, in our opinion, a close case.
Gil, can we hear from Fred Goldman about whether or not he's
Goldman's
determined...
not going to be speaking.
You said apparently that this was a verdict based on emotion. I just wanted to see if you could elaborate on that.
I couldn't hear you.
You said that this was a verdict apparently based on emotion. Why do you believe that? Was the swiftest at which it came in?
Well, we have less than 3 hours deliberation after, what, almost 9 months worth of evidence? I don't know. Yeah, I said I haven't had the opportunity to discuss it with the jurors, so I don't know.
You've done your best. You've had a huge amount of effort and time expended on this, and yet there are people out there in the streets all over Los Angeles cheering for O.J. Simpson. Why is that?
I'm not a psychologist. I can't answer that. I think you probably have more people who are profoundly disappointed with the result. Chris?
Is there one point in this trial that you think is pivotal, kind of a turning point one way or another, that was particularly the moment in the whole trial?
I don't think so. Is there? I mean...
Just to follow up on Kareem's question, considering the swiftness of this verdict after 8 months of testimony, is this a legitimate verdict?
Is this a legitimate verdict? Call it whatever you want. It's the verdict. And I'm not going to put any adjective in front of the verdict. It's a verdict.
Do you think historians will look back on it and consider a nullification verdict?
Well, certainly there are going to be many people who look at this, that this was, in fact, jury nullification.
Bill, all along you said that you had a mountain of evidence. What does this tell you about justice?
Give us a chance to reflect. I mean, this is... I don't know how... if you can really appreciate the profound disappointment that we're all feeling. Had this been a close case, all right. But you have professionals up here. We're surrounded by professionals. Every person here has tried so many cases, difficult cases, and very thin cases that we refer to them, where you don't know what the jury is going to do because it's very close in the way of evidence. In our professional judgment, it was overwhelming evidence. We still believe in the evidence in the case.
Given the reactions, different reactions within the city, how do you not lose faith in the system when you have so many people who feel one way about this and so many people feeling the other way?
Give me an opportunity to reflect on this before I'll take one more question.
The ugly truth really at this point, though, that this whole case did cut on race in the end.
Before I have an opportunity to hear what you learned from the jurors, I'm not going to respond to that. I mean, you have to understand that there is profound disappointment, but I have to admit to you that unlike Chris, I have a little anger too. And so I rather just be a little more reflective here before I do it.
Concerned at all that this kind of verdict, there are people out there who are not cheering as well. Do you think that this kind of verdict or this verdict will have some impact on people's faith in the system?
I didn't just fall off the back end of the turnip truck. And when you ask, are there people who are going to be doubting the criminal justice system? Of course there are going to be people who are going to be doubting the criminal justice system. But let me emphasize one thing. We've heard it time and again, but this case is not the usual case. Don't look at this case as being really how most cases are handled, or how most juries, or how most judges, or how most everyone who's involved in the process deal with the case. That's not the case. You know, the jurors do the right thing, you know, nearly all the time. That's it, folks. Thank you.
Wanting to talk to you. When do you think you can talk to them? Please.
I only have a few things to say.
ABC's club.
Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second. Excuse me. I want to thank, on behalf of my family, of all decent, law-abiding citizens in this country and nation, Marcia Clark, Chris Darden, Bill Hodgman, Gil Garcetti, I'll forget names, I'm sorry, quick help. Everybody, every single person in this DA's office. Until the other day, I had, honest to God, no clue how many people in this office had worked day and night for a year toward one goal, and that's justice. And to each and every single one of them, our profound thank you and blessings. Not to forget Mark, our victim's advocate, backbone. This prosecution team didn't lose today. I deeply believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served. I and my family will do everything in our power to bring about the kind of change that won't allow what happened today to ever happen to another family again. In closing, I only have one other thing to say, because I don't want to forget. I forget a lot of things. To my wife, Patty. To my daughter, Kim. To Michael and Lauren and Brian. My other kids. To all of our deep, close friends. Who have been there for us for this year and 4 months or 5 or whatever it's been. Who have helped us daily get through each day. We'll never be able to say thank you enough. I will forever be proud of my son and my family. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Prosecution news conference ends. With us here in New York, Peter Neufeld, part of the so-called dream team, the defense team that got a not guilty verdict from the jury today, not guilty on all counts for O.J. Simpson. Peter Neufeld, we discussed before, you said that it was your observation that the jury did not have a good reaction to Marcia Clark. What about the jury's reaction to Judge Lancido?
Well, you know, that's an interesting question also, because quite often if you have a long sequestration, the jurors bond with the judge because he's their keeper. He's the one who feeds them, he's the one who clothes them, he's the one who takes care of their lodging. In this case, I don't think that's what happened at all. I think they began to resent the judge. I think they began to resent the prosecution. I think they began to resent authority. They were being told what to do. Witnesses were on the witness stand too long after the points had been made. I think they saw the judge as somebody who had a certain point of view. I think the judge's bias was quite obvious, at least to those of us who represented Mr. Simpson. We felt that the judge was very pro-prosecution, both on and off the bench. We were all very disappointed at times with what we considered a very unjudicial temperament on his part, a pettiness. There was one occasion where, in fact, off the record, he was telling O.J. jokes. I mean, I can't think of any conduct more inappropriate for a judge than that. He was working on a book during the course of the trial. I think that's an affront to judicial integrity. And then the whole question of his wife and her involvement and what she knew with Furman. I believe that that's something that's going to haunt this judge for a long time and probably mandate some type of investigation inquiry into what went on before this trial ever began.
Taking all of that into account, I've heard any number of people say, that Judge Ito, he's really letting Johnny Cochran have the run of the place.
Well, you know, I think it's interesting. We were talking about this earlier. You and I can sit and we can watch exactly the same thing happening. And you can have one reaction, I'll have a completely different reaction. And that's because we bring our life experience to the table. And I didn't see it that way at all. I thought, in fact, he was extremely hostile to several defense attorneys.
Yourself included?
Myself and Mr. Scheck included in particular.
Thought you were too New Yorkie?
Well, I don't think it was so much too New Yorkie, but I think there's a certain club atmosphere. I think there's certainly a preference toward people who had been in the prosecutor's office, whether they were prosecutors now or defense attorneys now. But I think the judge had difficulty working with people who were not from that mold. And he made life very difficult at times and made it very difficult for Mr. Simpson to get a fair trial. But that's my perception from sitting on, on one side of the aisle. And no doubt prosecutors see it differently.
Did you talk to O.J. Simpson yourself during the trial?
Oh, gosh, we talked, I mean, regularly. He would, even when I came back to New York on occasion to visit my family, through the help of Kathy Randa, his assistant, he would track me down here in New York or any place else.
Can you tell me anything about what he said without breaking your client-attorney relationship?
No, I really can't. I mean, just that I think that O.J. was always very hopeful that he would be vindicated by these proceedings. He has a very fundamental and profound belief in the criminal justice system, and I guess it's been borne out by the verdict.
Is it true that once he saw you and Barry Scheck operate in and around this case, particularly in the courtroom, he said, I want these guys with a stronger role in the case?
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that, or at least I hope that he was pleased with our involvement and our commitment. One thing he had with us is we were two people away from home, so we were able to work on the case 24 hours a day. We didn't have the other competing interests.
He liked that?
I think he probably did like that.
Can you point to a moment in the trial when you, as a personal opinion, believe O.J. Simpson was at his lowest point? You've said he was hopeful all throughout, but his lowest point in the trial was what?
I really can't point to any particular moment. You know, from the time I got out there, and I got out there after the trial had already been in progress for a month. One of the bizarre things here is I'm one of the trial lawyers. I didn't even see the opening statements because I was on trial here in New York on another matter. But from the very moment I got out there, he was extremely hopeful all along. He was very optimistic. He really believed in his future, and he used to talk about his future and what he wanted to do with his family and friends. And and now he's going to have that opportunity. So I never saw him that down.
Is it true or untrue, or do you know that he's planning a pay for television pay-per-view, talk to O.J. to make back some of the money it cost him to defend himself?
I have absolutely no knowledge about anything like that.
Interesting, though, that he was hopeful all the way through. You can't remember a time when he got down and said, boy, I think this is really going against us.
No, he was always extremely hopeful because man, what's extraordinary is from the very first day I met O.J., he was adamant about his innocence, and he would have a very good view on what the evidence would ultimately show.
Did he want to take the stand in his own defense?
O.J. wanted to take the stand from the very first day, and even after we rested, and the judge finished instructing the jury Friday afternoon when we all got together in the holding pen with him after, he says, darn it, I should have taken the stand. That's what I really want to do. You know, and so he took that position from the very, very beginning.
Who carried the day in saying, no, O.J., you should not take the stand? Was that basically Cochran with the final say?
No, I think, frankly, it was Mr. Simpson's decision for himself. People had different opinions, and he made up his mind at that time. That's not to say that after he made up his mind, he didn't change it 24 hours later.
Peter Neufeld from the defense team. Our CBS News coverage of the not guilty on all counts verdict in the O.J. Simpson case will continue after these messages.
How long?
That was great.
If Mother Nature could make a bread, it would be Roman meal. Nutty sweet goodness. A low-fat way to help give your body nutrition. Roman meal. That's eating smart.
From Eureka Technology, the Victory Clean Air System for powerful cleaning on and above the floor. The Boss, sleek, trim, powerful. Mega Boss 14-inch wide pad cleans faster. Boss and Mega Boss, both mega values, only from Eureka.
Introducing an Alka-Seltzer that goes where no Alka-Seltzer has gone before. New Alka-Seltzer caplets. Now you can get the fast, effective relief you need in an easy-to-swallow caplet. So the next time you get acid indigestion or heartburn with headache, Alka-Seltzer caplets provide a very convenient solution. Anytime, anywhere. New Alka-Seltzer caplets, a great new way to feel better fast.
Now wait a minute.
New Shout gets out tough stains better the first time.
You know it makes me wanna
soap, chocolate, soap, bottle, soap, grapefruit, soap.
Come on now.
Shout has a new first-time formula, so nothing gets out tough stains better in one wash. Want a tough stain out the first time? Shout it out with new Shout. S.C. Johnson Wax.
To me, this is a really beautiful day. It's soup weather, and I'm a soup kind of guy. There's this cream and chicken with vegetables from Healthy Choice. Oh, man, that is rich stuff. Great big vegetables, lean chicken. Just makes you feel good. Sort of like slippers for your tummy or something. Like, oh, it only has 2 grams of fat. Beautiful. With Healthy Choice, I can eat what I like. Tomorrow's forecast, cream of mushroom.
Reaction in the wake of the not guilty on all counts verdict for O.J. Simpson. We go to Ted Wells, famed defense attorney based here in New York. Ted?
Well, I'm still somewhat taken aback by the speed in which the jury arrived at the verdict. But I would again like to emphasize, I think it's very important that we not focus too much on this issue of race and focus rather on the fact that there was reasonable doubt in this case. I mean, it was just extraordinary the number of holes the defense lawyers were able to poke in the prosecution's case and the number of mistakes that the police department made in the course of the investigation.
Greg Garrison in Los Angeles, former prosecutor in Indiana. I believe that you thought before this verdict was read that it most likely would be a conviction.
I really did, Dan, and I sit here trying to thaw out the numb parts of my brain that are amazed that this could happen the way that it did. And I guess that's why they built this courthouse, because my good friend Ted and I have to disagree on that a little bit. I think that had it taken 8, 9, 10 days, and they finally said, okay, we've been over this case, And by golly, we're just not satisfied that there's not a reasonable doubt. You're out of here. That's one thing. But to take this enormous quantum of uncontroverted proof, scientific proof, forensic evidence that was unlike anything I've ever had to work with in any case of mine, and I admit to you, many mistakes, but in a big case, a long trial, you're going to have them made on both sides. And to say to that, and just kind of take a wave of your hand and sweep it off the table, tells me one thing almost for sure, and that is that this case did not get lost this morning. It didn't get lost in argument, and it didn't get lost even in the case of the state's case in chief. It got lost in the jury selection process. We have said, we have taught, we have preached to kids that we've taught this business to for 20-some years that so many crucial things happen in the selection of the jury and in the opening statement that if you don't get that right, if you don't win there, you're crawling out of a hole the rest of the way through the case. And I think that the prosecutors would tell you that they had an awful time trying to find people that they thought would listen and wouldn't already have their minds made up or voting some other issue, and they were not able to get that job done. I think it is absolutely critical to an understanding of this verdict in 2 hours that they could not have recognized, looked at, examined, and taken apart this mountain of evidence and come to that decision that fast. I think the point of the matter is the minds have been made up for months and probably since about, October '94.
Laurie Levinson in Los Angeles, in the short time we have before a break, do you agree that this case, as you have had an opportunity to reflect on it, may have been lost in jury selection?
Well, I think that from the very beginning, you had people that had a definite view. I'm sure that they listened to the evidence, but it is true that the defense had Dr. Joellen Demetrius, and she is a major weapon. She has helped defense lawyers before in the Rodney King case, in the Reginald Denny case, in the Menendez case. She was back here again, and that may have played a major factor.
Peter Neufeld, as a member of the defense team, you've heard these comments. What think you?
Yeah, I think Greg is missing the point. You know, he talks about this mountain of scientific evidence. It's forensic evidence. And the difference between science and forensic evidence is people. And once you get people involved, and those people are police officers wearing lab coats, you've got to question the evidence. The integrity becomes seriously an issue. Here you had police officers who were handling the evidence from the beginning, mishandling the evidence, and they were distorting the scientific applications. And so it loses that aura of infallibility. Once people get involved, people make mistakes, police officers have their own biases, and that's what the jury was considering here. It's not science in the abstract.
Our CBS News coverage will continue on many of these CBS stations just after we take a break. Reviewing very quickly, O.J. Simpson has returned a free man to his home, the well-known Rockingham home, this afternoon. Absolutely free. He is not guilty on all counts. Our CBS News coverage will continue on a lot of these stations.
We've shown you that he would have killed, would not, could have killed. O.J. could not.
The verdict is in.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
The jury has spoken. The verdict. A special live edition of 48 Hours, tonight at 8 p.m.
Lights of the O.J. Simpson trial, a report from inside the courtroom with author Dominic Dunn by calling 1-800-934-NEWS for $19.95 plus $3.95 shipping and handling.
You're on CBS.
Have any questions about your prescriptions or over-the-counter medications?
Giant Eagle Pharmacist will be on call with the answers to all your medical questions.
Phone the Giant Eagle Pharmacist Day, Wednesday from 1 to 7, here on KDKA TV 2.
What do you do when your boss hands you a ticket and says, be in Bermuda tomorrow? Pack. I love adventure, and I don't like the same routine every day. So I chose a career with travel written all over it. And I started at the school that has placed travel professionals all across the country, Sawyer. ask yourself, should you choose a career like mine? Yes, if you like earning benefits along with your paycheck.
Call Sawyer today.
Local victims of domestic abuse react to the verdict on Eyewitness News Live at 5.
This is a CBS News special report. The O.J. Simpson case. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
The jury has spoken. O.J. Simpson not guilty. In a statement read by defense lawyers for O.J. Simpson, Mr. Simpson says that he believes the real killers are still out there and he hopes they are tracked down. O.J. Simpson went on to say that he is relieved that this, and I quote directly now, this, quote, incredible nightmare is over. Let's show you the videotape as the verdict was read today.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find a special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, has in this case been convicted of at least 1 crime of murder of the first degree and 1 or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this 2nd day of October 1995, Juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes. All right, counsel, Mr. Simpson, would you be seated, please? Let's have it quiet in the courtroom, please. All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you please poll the jurors?
Juror number 1, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 2, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 3, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 4, as to count 1, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 5, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 6, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 7, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 8, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 9, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 10, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 11, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 12, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Okay, count 2. Juror number 1, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 2, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 3, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 4, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 5, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 6, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 7, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 8, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 9, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 10, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 11, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 12, as to count 2, is this your verdict?
All right, the clerk is directed to record the verdicts as read. The parties agree to waive reading of the verdicts as recorded. Mr. Cochran, do you waive reading of the verdicts as recorded? Yes, Ms. Clark. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to at this time take this opportunity to publicly thank you for the service that you've given to us. The burdens that we've placed upon you were enormous, and words can't begin to express the debt that we owe to you for the time and patience and exertion that you've given to us during the course of this case. I will have an opportunity to meet with you privately later, and I'll give you my private comments when we have a chance to meet. I want to caution you at this time that there is, as you know, intense media interest in this case. The news media will probably seek you out at your home or at your place of business. And I would implore that the news media act responsibly to avoid harassing you or identifying you without your consent or otherwise causing you concern. Whether you wish to cooperate with the news media is, of course, entirely up to you. However, I must warn you to expect the worst as far as that is concerned. We want to, I know I share with you in expressing our thanks to the bailiffs from the Sheriff's Department, to our court reporters, Ms. Foxham and Ms. Olson, to the research attorney, John Byrne, who's assisted us, our Pepperdine law clerks, Mr. Golub and Ms. Carswell, our media liaison, Jerry Ann Hazlett, and her staff, and of course the jury commissioner, Gloria Gomez, and her staff. All right, counsel, is there anything we need to take up before we excuse the jurors? Mr. Cochran?
The verdict and scenes from the courtroom as the verdict was announced not guilty for O.J. Simpson. Laurie Levinson, if someone says, yeah, you're telling me the system worked, what is the system? Your answer is?
My reaction is this: you really have to have watched this whole trial, and we have to hear from the jurors. If the jurors basically just went on Johnny Cochran's closing argument and were sending messages, that might be a bit disturbing. Not that the message shouldn't be sent. Certainly the LAPD should not have racism. We should not have that anywhere. But we really hope that the jurors were listening to the evidence, and there were areas of weaknesses. As Peter Neufeld has pointed out, the defense mounted a very strong challenge to the scientific evidence. There are questions about how the glove got on the side of the house. And don't forget that the defense had a very strong defendant going into this case who had that presumption of innocence. And when it's O.J. Simpson, I really think the jurors take it seriously.
Ted Wells, your answer to, well, if the system worked, what basically is the system?
The system is one of faith in the jury system. It is basically similar to what I'll call unconditional love. You have to love it regardless of the ultimate verdict. You can't just love the system when it produces a verdict that you happen to like. You love it, you have faith in it, and I think over time the jury system has proven that it's the best system in the world.
We're going to take a quick break here. Our CBS News coverage live of reaction to the not guilty verdict in the Simpson case will continue in just a few moments, so stick here with us.
Hemorrhoids. The itch and pain can drive you crazy. Now, most doctors prefer another medicine over Preparation H's formula. It's the formula in Hemorid, aloe-enriched Hemorid. You see, Preparation H has no pain reliever, none, while Hemorid has a maximum strength, fast-acting pain reliever. No wonder, when doctors surveyed compare both, Hemorid's formula is the doctor's #1 choice. So relieve that itch and pain fast with Hemorid. When doctors compare both, Hemorid's formula is the doctor's #1 choice.
Not today.
Morning sinus. It's the worst kind of sinus pain.
How can I face this day?
When you've got to work, you've got to get strong sinus medicine that won't make you drowsy. Introducing non-drowsy Theraflu Sinus. Powerful new sinus caplets. No more pain, no more pressure, no drowsiness.
I can do this.
When it's got to work, it's got to be new Theraflu Sinus.
When I was young, Mom was always making sure I ate right.
It wasn't always easy.
Well, now we're listening to our doctors and taking better care of our health with Ensure.
Ensure is recommended #1 by doctors as a source of complete balanced nutrition.
More than a vitamin supplement, Ensure has all the nutrients adults need to help stay healthy, active, be energetic.
Drink Ensure as a meal.
Or in between, Ensure. To your health, Mom.
To our health.
Ensure. Doctors recommend it #1.
There were once 5 brothers who made extraordinary pasta sauces I have never forgotten. Each brother brought his treasure. Raphael, tomatoes heavy in hand, fresh, pungent to smell. Christophe, summer leaf basil. With fresh garlic, onions, they created more than a meal, More like a first kiss. Taste the new pasta sauces they inspired. 5 brothers, 1 passion.
We've shown you that he would have killed, would not, could have killed, O.J. could not.
The verdict is in.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
The jury has spoken. The verdict. A special live edition of 48 Hours tonight at 8 p.m.
I want to show you the pictures again, and for those of you who have not seen them before, of O.J. Simpson coming home, an emotional homecoming after the not guilty verdict, a hug with A.C. Cowlings. The irony of O.J. Simpson's flight to freedom after the double murder acquittals was obvious. News helicopters whirling above for live coverage of that sheriff's van that brought him to his Brentwood estate. Bill Lagatuta is in Los Angeles with more of the reaction from in and around the courthouse. Bill?
Dan, certainly there's been no trouble. There's been no organized protests, and there's been very little emotional outbursts, save for the one that took place outside the courthouse here this morning as the verdict was read. A huge whoop of support from fans of O.J. Simpson when the not guilty verdicts were announced. But I must tell you, wandering around in the street among the crowd of several thousand out there, there were probably just as many people looking bewildered, saying, how could this have happened? Or, I told you race would make the difference in this case. Well, that crowd of several thousand, which looked very much like a Hollywood premiere or an Oscar night celebration, has dissipated for the most part. But the police were there just to make sure there was no trouble. And a few minutes ago, the police chief of the city, Willie Williams, flanked by Mayor Richard Reardon, who flew back last night from a trade mission in Japan just to make sure everything was okay, went on television with a message for Los Angeles.
I certainly hope that the 12 men and women who endured 9 months of evidence gathering, testimony, and so forth, when they closeted themselves yesterday, made their decisions, and the decisions that were announced this morning are based on the fact that they believe there was not a preponderance of evidence to find Mr. Simpson guilty. I certainly hope that the decisions were not based on the defense team putting my department on trial, that they were not made based on the race card that was played, because the vast majority of the men and women of the Los Angeles Police Department, day in and day out, put their lives on the line to serve the people of our community.
I want to reiterate my confidence in the men and women of the LA Police Department. The vast, vast majority of them have, do, and will serve this city with dignity.
We have to make sure that we work to pull this department together, because we have been pulled a little bit apart because of the issues that have occurred over the past 18 months.
And earlier this morning at the police department headquarters here in downtown Los Angeles, Police Chief Willie Williams met with members of the Robbery Homicide Division. That's the squad that led this investigation and dug up the so-called mountain of evidence which the jury apparently was unconvinced by. The chief told the detectives, we have faith in you, you did your job, I know you're disappointed, but just go out there and hang in there. Among the detectives in the crowd this morning, being addressed by the chief today, being given a pep talk, if you will, were the lead investigators in this case, Detectives Tom Lang and Philip Van Adder. Dan?
Thanks, Bill Lagatuta. Peter Neufeld, Associate of Barry Schreck, key member of the defense team. You heard the police chief say that you and the others had put his department on trial and had played the race card. I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, we didn't put the department on trial. The department put itself on trial by doing things in a very poor fashion that it did. I mean, it's not just the detectives at the scene initially who refused to pursue any other leads other than O.J. Simpson, but once this so-called mountain of evidence was turned over to the Los Angeles Police Department's Scientific Investigation Division, they did everything they could to compromise or corrupt or completely just, you know, wreak havoc on this evidence. They followed none of the normal scientific standards and rules. And you had evidence which really wasn't worth anything, and that's what became very, very clear to the jury. What the LAPD is going to have to do after this trial is completely overhaul their laboratory division. They need new personnel in there. It should be run by civilians, not by law enforcement. They should bring in people with PhDs and people with the proper training to bring this laboratory up to the 21st century. It's not there now, and it's got a long way to go.
What about the race card?
Well, you know, there's 52 cards in the deck, and the prosecution was playing, you know, the domestic discord card here. They were suggesting just because there had been an incident in '89 that means that he did this in 1994. I've represented a number of women who had killed their batterers and abusers over the last decade. Some of them very significant cases here in New York. I've never seen a case where there wasn't this escalating cycle of violence that preceded the ultimate act. And none of those indications or hallmarks were present here. And it's wrong to think of it that way. It's a case like any other case. They didn't meet their burden of proof, the burden of proof that the Constitution requires, and it's plain and simple. It's not a race card, it's not a domestic discord card, it's a whole deck of cards, and that's how the jury rendered its verdict.
Chair left court.
You know, somebody said earlier that there was a lot of uncontradicted evidence. In fact, the defense, Peter and Barry and everybody else, contradicted everything. But the major contradiction in this case, the central one, was the accusation that the police planted evidence. I mean, both Cochran and Scheck in their closing arguments made a very, very strong pitch to get this jury to focus on that. And if the jury did believe that there was evidence planted, and that's what they believed, then this verdict is right on. I mean, you cannot have a country that's fair and just if police can go about doing those things in order to get someone.
Now, while we were watching O.J. Simpson arrive back at his home on Rockingham Live a short while ago, the news conference being held by the defense continued. We carried some of that defense news conference live, then we cut away eventually to cover live O.J. Simpson's return to his home. Now we want to bring you part of the rest of that news conference, so let's pick it up.
I have been looking for the right opportunity, and I guess there never is the right opportunity, to personally express my condolences to Mr. Goldman and to his family for the horrible murder of his son. I have had the opportunity, fortunately, to express that to the Brown family when I attended the services early on and the funeral. I sat at the end of the counsel table and was the only lawyer who could see the audience. And our eyes would focus. And the anger that he had and showed was real. And I wanted to reach out and tell him that we did have our sympathies and condolences with him during this horrible time of grief. Regarding the race issue, I'm going to speak about that at greater length when I get my thoughts together, but there has been a difference of opinion with many of the lawyers. I said from the beginning that race was not an issue in this case and should not be an issue. I still feel the same way. However, credibility was always an important issue in this case. And I think that's what the jury focused on. I think the jury, initially when Mark Furman denied ever using the N-word, knew, as the rest of the world knew, that he was not telling the truth. It was just a matter of us being in a position where we could prove it.
A lot of legal scholars and commentators and other people have said that this trial shouldn't be a model for anything. How do you respond to that?
They may be right. They weren't right about much, but they may be right about that from this standpoint. This trial is more of an aberration, but this trial does stand for something. It stands for hard work. One thing, whether or not you appreciate what we did day in and day out, you know every day we came to work, and we were serious about it. And if defense lawyers and prosecutors across the country will work as hard as the lawyers worked in this case, it'll make our system work better. It is an aberration because of all the aberrant things that occurred during the trial. But there's no excuse for not working hard and believing your client and trying to make sure the Constitution works. When Jerry Ullman talked about people turning the Constitution on its head, we took that to heart. And so I hope people will learn that.
The Brown and Goldman families are pursuing wrongful death suits against Mr. Simpson. Can you give us any idea of what those proceedings may be like, and will any members of the current defense team be involved in defending Mr. Simpson?
Our office is currently representing Mr. Simpson in 3 separate matters. One filed by Mr. Goldman's natural mother, Sharon Rufo. Another lawsuit filed by Fred Goldman on behalf of his son, and a 3rd lawsuit filed by Lewis Brown. Those suits are still in its infancy. There has been basically an agreement by all parties to withhold the propounding of discovery the taking of depositions, and other matters that are more common in a civil case until the conclusion of this particular matter. I hope that given the results of this case, there will be a re-examination by the plaintiffs exploring the wisdom of continuing the lawsuit in its present forms.
We're going to take one more question, Dave Martin.
I have a question for Joe Ellen. I wonder if you could tell us, Joe Ellen, which jurors you were watching the most closely, which ones you think, in your mind, loom the largest in this verdict, and whether or not you were surprised that the prosecution didn't use its challenges on particular jurors, particularly number 6, and anything you can tell us about number 6.
The entire process and the process of preemptively challenging the jurors was a fascinating one that I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion about later on. I was surprised by some of the strike patterns that they had, but as we know, it was a very hard-fought battle on their part to exclude a lot of minorities from this jury. In terms of watching the jury and looking at each one, all of us looked at each one of these individuals as a whole. Ultimately, we don't know who were the key players in the deliberation process. Certainly, we can assume that because jury number 1 was voted the foreperson in such a quick period of time, that she had a significant role in the deliberation process. I think all of us had our guesses about what thoughts of different jurors were, but that's yet to be borne out since we have not yet talked to them.
Can I say one last thing regarding this? You asked about a question about what this case may mean in the future. I think we're not going to see any long sequestrations like this. This is a nightmare, and people in America, they're worried about changing verdicts to less than unanimous. They should be worried about sequestration. This is prison. This is unfair. These people deserve great plaudits, and I trust and hope that people will not criticize this jury for this verdict. They did what they thought was right, and they've been here. We met these people September 26, 1994.
Okay, one more.
For Mr. Blazer, please.
Blazer.
Yes. Mr. Cochran, could you elaborate a little bit on the search for the killer or the killers? Are you going to expend any resources? Are you going to put up a reward? Any details about that effort?
Yeah, but I'm going to ask Bob Blazer to answer that, and then she'll answer this as I would.
Yeah, it's really too soon to make any of those kinds of plans. We've been awfully busy for about 9 months, and we've been preoccupied with getting this acquittal. And so, all that's really looming in the future.
Are you planning a reward, hopefully reward?
We haven't really discussed that in detail. That's something that Mr. Simpson will deal with when he has time to think about that.
Let me add a comment to that. There are 2 chances that the culprit or culprits will be identified. Number 1, every criminal who is arrested is asked by the police, once he's told he's in deep doo-doo, who can you give us that's bigger than you are? And somebody out there knows. And second, when circumstances permit, enough money will be placed on the street so that information will begin to flow. That's how cases of this sort are solved, and we hope that the law enforcement agency that gets the first bit of information is ready to step forward and do the right thing.
In closing, we'd just like to say on behalf of everyone who participated in this, that this is not a time for celebration, that this is a time for the American people to reflect upon our system of justice, to show that the presumption of innocence works, to show that the Bill of Rights is an important function for all of us, and to contemplate if there are better ways to improve the system. Let's work towards that. And we hope that everybody who has an opinion discusses it in a rational and reasonable way. This is a subject that will be debated, but that everyone remain calm and peaceful, and we all go back to our lives as they were before this case. Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless all of you. Thank you.
Mr. Shapiro, of course, headed the case. It was he who agreed to step, if you will, at least a little off center stage so Johnny Cochran could come on, take the lead. Obviously, that was an O.J. Simpson decision in the final analysis, but Mr. Shapiro has to be given credit by the defense team, and has been given a lot of credit for being willing to do this. These are live pictures of the Simpson family returning to the Rockingham estate, where O.J. Simpson is already. O.J. Simpson's mother says she knew her son was innocent. Let's go. Let's pick up this audio. Is it David Horowitz of KCBS TV? Let's see if we can pick up his audio.
A very emotional moment for the Simpson family.
Bob, we have a ground...
Zoom on in. There you can see Jason talking to other family members. You can see Robert Kardashian, O.J.'s longtime friend and attorney, in the shot as well. You see other family members. And follow Kardashian. Let me zoom on up here and see the activity in the doorway. More friends. And we still haven't seen O.J. Simpson come outside to greet anybody. There's O.J. Simpson's mother being helped out of the vehicle. She uses a wheelchair. She has a great deal of difficulty moving around, but you see under her own power being helped out and walking up to the driveway. And then you can see more family members here. And the shot that we were hoping to get would be the shot of O.J. Simpson greeting his family out on the front driveway. We haven't seen that yet. We're hoping that he does come outside. His mother is moving very slowly toward the front door. More hugs. Robert Kardashian hugging another family member. And, okay, to a wider shot here. Okay, his sister is, one of his sisters back inside the house. And another friend moving toward the front of the home. And that's a side entrance as well. We're going to move a little bit forward.
You know, at this point, Bob, I've counted at least 25 family members and friends going into that house. They must have quite a reunion area staked out. As a matter of fact, in the backyard, they have a picnic area. You might be able to show it from the air where they've been congregating. There are some screens in front of it where they've been in the backyard. That's where they've been gathering in and out of the house.
So far, we've been able to see a 360 view of the home, and we've not seen O.J. Simpson make an appearance yet. He has not appeared on his balcony. At this point, family members just arrived. They left the courthouse a short time ago, and we saw Darnell race in, jumping up and down from the black limousine, racing inside the house, ecstatic, and Jason giving a big, heartfelt hug to Robert Kardashian, a longtime friend of O.J. Simpson, and recently got his bar card back and helped represent O.J. Simpson through the trial. Okay, we're going to move the camera to the backyard, see if we can see what you were looking at. All the family members, the relevant family members, are inside the house, so we're going to move to the backyard area, and we're going to see if we can see the screened-off area that David's been telling us about.
Also, Bob, you know, while you're up there, you ought to tilt a little bit picture to the left to show where the press is, because, you know, you're getting fabulous pictures, and we're getting really good pictures from the ground because we're on top of a ladder here. But most of the press are crowded in here, as you can see, like a bunch of people on a college prank. You know, how many people can get into the phone booth?
Oh, that's right. You know what? Know something? They have actually shut down most of this area, and the press has been herded into just one small area. Now, this is a number. These are a lot of people from the press. There's about 150 of them. Now, the KU uplink satellite trucks are still being blocked and barricaded from the area, and they are not being allowed through the area. And I don't know why. Under State Penal Code Section 409.5, they're supposed to be allowed to have access to the scene, but you know, nothing in this case has been has been following all the numbers anyway. But there's the media area. Now,
hey,
to
Bob,
the left.
Bob,
yes.
do you see my hand from up there?
No, I don't.
Look to the front of the line, and you'll see where I am in relation to you and where I am in relation to the courtyard.
Okay,
You see that?
Arnell is back. Yes, I did. You were in the front.
Okay.
We're going to go back to Arnell. See, let's get to the front of the house. Arnell is back in the front yard. Let's move to the front. No, you don't have to. You can move rapidly. Well, let me just, this is like a flying camera platform, and it takes about 8 hands to make everything work. And we're going to move around to the front of the house and get a shot of Arnell that was out in the front of the home. Doesn't look like she's there now. Okay, the front, wait a minute. I was looking through a skylight, and I could see somebody through the skylight window. But this is the front of O.J. Simpson's house. I'll give you an aerial tour, if you would, if you'd like, of the O.J. Simpson estate. Now, this is sitting in Ashford in Rockingham, and this play area was designed and created for O.J. Simpson's children. And they played here. And after the murders occurred for a number of months, we saw Cato the dog down in the Sandy area. And the dog seemed to stand guard, and we saw a number of security guards. This is the front of the house. This is the U-shaped driveway. The one driveway takes you from Ashford, the other to Rockingham. And then as we go to a wider shot, the infamous backyard crawl space.
From CBS News, you are watching live coverage of the aftermath of O.J. Simpson's not guilty on all counts verdict on CBS News.
You heard the prosecution and defense talk about. Now, over to this area is a tennis court. We've never seen anybody use it, never. And over to the left is a pool. And this pool area is just O.J. Simpson's room. Let me zoom on in. Overlooks the pool area. And there you can see O.J. Simpson's balcony right here. And
well, we turn to Peter Neufeld, member of the defense team, who's been generous enough to come in and chat with us this afternoon very quickly because we need to take a break here. But at any time, do you recall O.J. Simpson saying anything along the lines, listen, you guys are doing a good job, but I think you need to be more aggressive. You're letting these prosecutors get away with an awful lot in there.
Well, there's no question that Mr. Simpson played a very active role in his own defense here. And I think most of you who were covering the trial while it was happening could actually hear O.J. calling out questions to us while we were cross-examining witnesses, telling us that we had left out this question or we didn't follow through enough on that question. And there was no question that there was one extra lawyer sitting at the defense table, and that was O.J. throughout. He always was very forthright with his own opinions, not just in the holding cell, not just on Saturday night when we'd visit with him, but right there in court, in session, while the jury was sitting there. And that's just the way he is.
Did you ever hear him make any reference to his football days and listen, if I can do that, I can do this, that sort of thing?
Not necessarily that directly, but at times he did talk about some of the things he was able to do on the field, and no matter how inclement the weather was, no matter who the adversaries were, he was able to get through, and he was hopeful and confident that the same would apply here.
And indeed it did. Champagne all around. How sweet it is for the Simpson family. Glasses of champagne, toasting one another, toasting the defense team.
That's his sister and niece, who you just saw.
Any indication of to whom O.J. Simpson was the closest in this trial in terms of his family? Obviously his children. He's spoken of his children already this afternoon.
Well, there's one thing that goes without saying, is that he has a very tight nuclear family there, and he's very close with his mother. He's extremely close with his sisters. And of course, he's very close with both his elder son and his elder daughter. And he hopes beyond all hope that he can now get back in touch with his younger two children as well. But the whole Simpson family was there all the time. And one thing that became very clear to me, that both of his sisters play a very active role in defining his conduct, both in and outside the courtroom.
Peter Neufeld of the defense team, who's helping us with our CBS News reaction and commentary in the wake of the not guilty verdict for O.J. Simpson. We'll have more after these messages, so stay here with us.
Heard the latest news about eggs and cholesterol? Write for our booklet, Eggs in Good Health.
Ooh, you gotta love it, the incredible edible egg. I love it.
Denture wearers don't let anything keep you from getting close, especially denture odor. Get Polident. It's loaded with minty mouthwash ingredient. It controls denture odor and cleans tough stains in just 5 minutes. Get Polident fresh and granddaughter close. I can't fall asleep.
I can't stay asleep. Try Nitol Quick Caps to fall asleep fast and get a good night's sleep. Get Nitol Quick Caps.
Nitol will help you get yours ease. Hey there, little Red Riding Hood. You sure are looking good. You're everything. Big bad wolf.
In recent tests, Maybelline's Natural Defense makeup was shown to have a dramatic effect on the opposite sex. However, its unbelievably natural finish does offer a protection policy against all but the worst problems. Maybelline's Natural Defense makeup with the Easy Match color system. You got it made in this shade.
Maybe she's born with it.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
We've
shown you that he would have killed, would not, could have killed. O.J. could not.
The verdict is in.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
The jury has spoken. The verdict. A special live edition of 48 Hours, tonight at 8 p.m.
You're on CBS.
Did you know that Alpine Lace Reduced Fat and Sodium Swiss is one of the most popular deli cheeses in America? That's because we love it. Well, there's something new from Alpine Lace you're going to love just as much. Fat-free turkey with 63% less sodium. Put Alpine Lace fat-free turkey on top of Alpine Lace Reduced Fat Swiss, and you multiply the taste and subtract the fat and sodium. Ask for new Alpine Lace fat-free turkey at your deli. No fat, no fat, no fat.
Have any questions about your prescriptions or over-the-counter medications?
Giant Eagle Pharmacist will be on call with the answers to all your medical questions.
Phone the Giant Eagle Pharmacist Day, Wednesday from 1 to 7, here on KDKA TV2.
If you're a mom or dad or expect to be one, the Pittsburgh Baby Fair is for you. Enjoy fabulous shopping opportunities, product information, samples, interactive exhibits, and children's entertainment. There's lots to do for the whole family. Admission is only $5 for grown-ups, and all children are admitted free. Discount admission coupons are available at area Giant Eagle supermarkets. The Pittsburgh Baby Fair, October 14th and 15th from 10 till 6 at the Pittsburgh Expo Mart. A portion of all ticket sales will benefit the For Kids' Sake Fund.
Wing star Steven Weber takes off. Next, day and date.
CBS News coverage of the O.J. Simpson case continues. From New York, here again is Dan Rather.
Not guilty for O.J. Simpson. Let's go to Dominic Dunn, our special CBS News consultant and author with Vanity Fair magazine, and of course author of a number of books. Dominic Dunn, now that you've had a little better chance to gather your thoughts, take us through what it was like to be inside that courtroom when the verdict came in and was announced.
Well, it was a shock in the courtroom. I think it was a shock to everyone. It looked to me as if it was even a shock to O.J. Simpson. To my right sat the Goldman family. They were absolutely stunned by the verdict, as were the Browns, who were seated right behind me. There was a great deal of crying, a great deal of sobbing.
And O.J. Simpson, you said, looked surprised himself, in your opinion, when it first happened. Then he hugged his attorneys.
And then he hugged his attorneys. To my left, over the Simpson family, of course, were overjoyed. But they, I must say, they have behaved as they behaved throughout this trial in perfect taste. They did not cheer, they did not do anything untoward, but they were, you could see how pleased, how relieved they all were.
Dominic, I know you watched Judge Ito very carefully, and there was a point when he was reading the verdict, when he first opened the verdict, in which his voice cracked. Did you attach any significance to that?
Yeah,
do you think he was surprised?
I do. I saw that moment, Dan, and I felt very much that he was surprised. I think there were so many of us who thought it was going to be a guilty verdict. I don't know how Judge Ito felt about that, but it certainly seemed a surprise to him.
Dominic Dunn, thank you. Our CBS News live coverage of reaction to the not guilty verdicts in the O.J. Simpson case will continue in a moment. Washington, they're talking about looking into some aspects, quote unquote, of the Simpson case. The department has indicated it will look into possible police brutality in the wake of the tape remarks by former LAPD Detective Mark Furman. So what's laid out here, there is a possibility, the potential that O.J. Simpson, now free on a not guilty verdict, would be a free man, and that Mark Furman and some others, well, let's just say they now face the possibility of some very serious problems in the criminal justice system. CBS News correspondent John Roberts, my colleague here in New York, has been sampling reaction from around the country. John?
Dan, there have been a number of trials over the course of history that have attracted national attention. Lindbergh kidnapping case, Charles Manson trial, William Kennedy Smith recently, but rarely, if ever, has the nation waited so breathlessly for a verdict. In terms of coverage and anticipation, it's pretty safe to say that this was the judicial equivalent of a moonshot.
In the Oakland, California neighborhood where O.J. grew up, there was elation when the verdict was read.
society, African-American people are always done so wrong. But now I just got through saying that justice means just us too. Right on OJ! We love you, baby!
People nearly dropped their chins in their cups in this Seattle coffee shop. And at the University of Washington Law School,
I'm happy because justice was served. I'm shocked. Why? I thought the evidence was overwhelming.
a half a continent away at this Minneapolis barber shop, reaction to the verdict was muted. This man expected it.
I didn't feel that he was guilty from the start.
But one patron said he'd like a few answers from Simpson.
It'd be nice if he could really go on and let us know whether or not he had anything to do with this, or where his actual whereabouts were.
In New York's Times Square, it was the biggest event since New Year's. The city that never sleeps stopped for a moment. The defense's expert witness, Dr. Henry Lee, watched the verdict in Connecticut. He had praise for the work the prosecution scientist did, but said perhaps there was too much science for the jury.
Introduce evidence so repetitively, and jury start looking back the basic. That amount of time is not possible for individual to commit that.
Well, after a month or so.
Making his comments, Dr. Lee also said that he did not have enough evidence and information to form a definitive opinion one way or the other, but as he said in court, and as was repeated many times in the course of the defense's case, something was wrong, it appeared, with the prosecution's evidence. Dan?
We're going to talk about that with some of our analysts here, including Peter Neufeld, who was part of the defense team. But right now, let's talk about worldwide reaction. It's certainly true that around the world there were people who would say, what is this O.J. Simpson case about? And even when you explained who O.J. Simpson was, they still didn't know. But there was worldwide interest in the case, and Mark Phillips in London has been tracking overseas reaction today. Mark?
Dan, from overseas, from the beginning of this trial, the reaction was one of fascination and disgust. Much of the image of America over here comes from Hollywood, and today's verdict really reconfirmed that image. In London tonight, where they'd normally be having an after-work drink and waiting for the soccer game, even the pub stood still for the verdict in the Simpson trial. Newscasts were extended and programs interrupted, waiting to see what the jury had decided.
Within the next few minutes, the verdict will finally be delivered in the murder case which has gripped America, the trial of O.J. Simpson.
And when it came, the reaction here seemed to split along the same racial lines as reaction in the U.S.
Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
The trial here has been watched not just for its intrinsic interest, but as a barometer of America, and that's the way it's been reported.
One thing this trial has done, sadly, is to underline the huge gap between the races in America.
And the verdict seemed to confirm what is not an attractive image.
I think he was guilty.
Well, I personally think he's guilty, but it's amazing what a good lawyer does for you.
Well, they've done it, haven't they? They've legalized murder for the second time. That's, first of all with the death sentence, now with O.J.
And as an indication of the interest in the story here, tonight's specially held press run of the London Evening Standard, the evening paper, had this headline on it: "The image of America, of showbiz and big money and violence confirmed once again." Dan?
Mark Phillips in London. Our CBS News coverage will continue, but first I want to remind you a special live edition tonight of 48 Hours. That'll be on the air at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the Central Time Zone. We'll have a live edition of 48 Hours all about the Simpson case. Right now we take this break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Itch, rash, stop suffering. Cortisone 10 stops the itch and helps heal the rash. Cortisone 10 has the medicine doctors recommend most for itch and rash relief. None of these products have it. Look, Cortisone 10 applied to itchy rash gets under the itch for fast relief and help in healing. See? No more itch, no more rash. Get maximum strength Cortisone 10. It has the medicine doctors recommend most to stop the itch and help heal the rash.
Introducing new Colonel's Crispy Strips from KFC. Juicy all-white meat chicken freshly prepared with our special extra tasty crispy recipe. Now you can get 3 Colonel's Crispy Strips, mashed potatoes and gravy, coleslaw and a biscuit, all for just $2.99.
Both
These men took cold pills, but Jack's quit working hours ago. Dave's didn't quit. He took Epidac 24. Unlike most tablets, Epidac releases the right amount of medicine at the right time for 24-hour relief. Epidac, the cold pill that just won't quit.
Does your bra have a time limit? Be comfortable for 18 hours. Introducing 18 Hours Satin and Lace. With cushioned comfort straps. It's full support that's endlessly comfortable. Why suffer another second? Playtex 18 Hour.
It happens in the hospital. It happens at home. It's the onset of heartburn. It's an attack of acid indigestion. For these stomach flare-ups, the #1 choice of hospitals is Maalox. Hospitals know that nothing works faster to rush heartburn relief. Now, you know it too. Fast-acting Maalox. Hospitals can count on it for speed, and that's just what you need. Maalox, the first choice for hospitals, the fast choice for home. In fast-acting Maalox tablets too.
Peter Neufeld, member of the defense team, has been so generous with your time and your insights this afternoon. If there's any one thing you want people to take away from this trial, what would it be?
I guess I'd have to echo some of the thoughts of some of the other speakers about the importance of the system of trial by jury in our country. Some people have talked about doing away with it. Some people have talked away about having a judge try our fate or having a less than unanimous jury. And I mean, frankly, if any of us or any of you out there were ever charged with a serious crime, I can assure you that you would want no other system than the system that gave O.J. Simpson his freedom today.
Let's bring in Karen Grisby Bates, who's in Los Angeles, been helping us today, and in Boston, Dr. Alvin Poussant, who's professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. First, Dr. Poussant, you've been watching these proceedings today, and from your experience and your background, give us your reaction to what's happened.
Well, my reaction was one of great surprise, I think, at the verdict, because there was so much said over the airways yesterday and today that it would be a guilty verdict. I think my reaction was in part, too, wondering what white America would think about the decision, because there's a tendency to attribute the decision to the fact that there were 9 black jury members who could not vote to convict O.J. Simpson. And I think many white Americans will continue to believe that, even though they would have to look at the hard facts of the prosecution case and the defense's case. But I think that this trial, whether we like it or not, is going to influence race relations in the United States and polarize some people who feel O.J. Simpson was guilty and felt that perhaps he got off because blacks refused to convict a black man. And we don't know if that's some element in the case, but we know that it was played out in the trial. Race was always an undercurrent in the trial. Cochran used it very effectively, and who knows how it affected the individual juror. I know if it was me, and I was sitting on a jury, and they presented Mark Furman to me and said that he also had critical evidence with a glove that was found, I would have a lot of doubt about in that situation. And I think one important thing we learned from the trial is that white people and black people, generally speaking, they're not monolithic, but generally speaking, may have a different perspective on the same issue because they have different historical experiences. And I think that came through loud and clear in the polls that were taken, in people's reaction, even the newscast we just witnessed, that blacks and whites have a little bit of a different take. And I think it's important for us to recognize those differences, cultural differences, and why we have them here in the United States and what we need to do about them.
Karen Grigsby Bates writes for the Los Angeles Times, frequently appears on the LA Times op-ed page. Address yourself to what Dr. Poussant just said. Certainly there is the potential for increased polarization of the races as a result of this trial, but do you or do you not think there's also a possibility for some greater understanding growing out of this? For example, Mark Furman and his racist comments, the kind of thing that so many African Americans have been saying, listen, white America, you don't understand what it is for us in the police department. This is on tape and no one can deny it. Is it possible or not that this is going to help?
That was the silver lining, Dan, to the whole business of the Furman tapes, that
people in black communities have been complaining about this for years and years and years, saying there's an abuse of power, there's sort of flagrant disregard of our citizens' rights, and that when the Furman tapes came out, and when you heard from the mouth of a policeman say, you know, sometimes we used to de-stress ourselves by going out and beating up black guys, or, you know, when people sassed us, we would beat their faces into mush, or if we didn't have enough, we'd sort of massage the evidence because we knew they were wrong and we wanted to help it along, that while white America was being shocked at that, black America sort of sat back and shrugged and said, well, okay, now you know. What are we going to do about it? I think one of the important points that Dr. Poussaint brought up was the whole business of what happens after you move forward, after all the cameras are shut down, and after O.J. Simpson goes off to wherever he's going off to, and after the Goldmans and the Browns start to finish their grieving process, if they ever manage to do that, what happens afterwards? I heard someone mutter as the not guilty verdict went up, oh my God, we are cooked. White people are going to make us pay for this for the rest of our lives. And it was interesting to me, I kept hearing Chris Darden's closing remarks to the jury saying, please get beyond your personal bitterness, get beyond what you feel, you know, might have happened to you that was unjust. And I would exhort, you know, white people who feel that way to do the same thing, because I think that's critical in our healing process as a country.
Thank you very much, and we'll be back with more of our CBS News live coverage after these messages.
No matter what kids are up to, one thing they're always into is Sunny Delight. Well, now there's new Sunny Delight Light. It's low in calories, with the same vitamins as regular Sunny Delight, and a great citrus taste. And that's something any kid will flip over. New Sunny Delight Light, the good stuff kids go for.
Which meal turns dinner time into family time?
Manwich, that's which.
Which meal's been your favorite since you were a kid?
Manwich, that's which.
Which sauces bring tacos and burritos to life?
Taco and burrito seasoning sauces from Manwich, that's which.
Which meal is as quick and easy as it is delicious?
Manwich, that's which.
Sounds great. So what are you craving right now?
Manwich, that's what.
Manwich. Whenever you're hungry, it's the right answer.
Listen, hair that's been damaged from perming, coloring, and blow drying can sound as bad as it looks. But if you use Alberto VO5 hot oil once a week, the awful sounds will start to disappear. Use it before you shampoo, and VO5's long-lasting intensive conditioners will bond to the damaged sites of every strand, revitalizing and moisturizing to restore your hair's vitality. So use VO5 hot oil once a week, every week, because hair should be seen and not heard.
Hey there, Little Red Riding Hood. You sure are looking good. You're everything. Big bad wolf.
In recent tests, Maybelline's Natural Defense makeup was shown to have a dramatic effect on the opposite sex. However, its unbelievably natural finish does offer a protection policy against all but the worst problems. Maybelline's Natural Defense makeup with the Easy Match color system. You got it made in the shade.
Maybe she's born with it.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Peter Neufeld, member of the defense team, you said you had something you wanted to address about race in the case.
Well, just the one thing that always intrigued me here was that until they saw that King videotape, people would not believe that police could brutalize someone that way. When people talked about genocidal racism views on the part of the LAPD, no one could believe that until they actually heard the Furman tapes. I think white America has to turn inside and consider its own racism at this point, and not simply just shuffle it, you know, along like they have each time that this has happened. Once we as a people start realizing just how deep-seated this racism is, then we can move on and we cannot have this kind of thing happen in the future.
Laura Levinson, we're near the end of this portion of our live coverage. Your final thoughts for at least now, and we'll hear more on the evening news.
I think there is a lot to take out of this case. I've really appreciated hearing from everybody today, because there are going to be people who agree with the verdict, people who disagree, but it doesn't help just to say the other side's wrong. I wish the jurors would come out and speak to us so we could know whether this is a message or whether there was a problem with the evidence. That's the only way to really put an end to this.
Ted Wells.
That regardless of how you feel about the verdict, that all of us come together in terms of the basic point that the Mark Furmans of the world should be rid from all of law enforcement. And I think that's a very important message.
Chair Lefcourt.
I can't help but feel that this jury took a look at those police and said, look, we can't trust it. They may have planted evidence, and we're not going with it.
That concludes our live coverage of today's O.J. Simpson verdict, a not guilty on all counts verdict, and reaction to it. There will be more about today's dramatic developments on your local news, and we're preparing a complete series of reports for tonight's CBS Evening News. Please note that at 8 o'clock tonight in the East and West, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock everywhere except the Central Time Zone 7 there, a special live edition of 48 Hours. Thanks to all of our superb consultants and to our guests. Peter Neufeld, we especially appreciate you coming in, member of the defense team. Until tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather at CBS News World Headquarters in New York. We'll see you later.
Order a video cassette of highlights of the O.J. Simpson trial, a report from inside the courtroom with author Dominic Dunn by calling 1-800-934-NEWS for $19.95 plus $3.95 shipping and handling.
Verdict is in.
Not guilty of the crime of murder.
The jury has spoken. The verdict, a special live edition of 48 Hours, tonight at 8 p.m. You're on CBS.
Have any questions about your prescriptions or over-the-counter medications?
Giant Eagle Pharmacist will be on call with the answers to all your medical questions.
Phone the Giant Eagle Pharmacist Day, Wednesday from 1 to 7, here on KDKA TV 2.
Now, who's that?
That's Andrew. He's running around with Victoria.
Is that Victoria?
No, that's Allison. Remember, she married Damon and then got amnesia.
Is that Damon?
No, that's Alex. Damon is in a coma after the hot air balloon accident.
Who are those two people?
I will be so glad when she gets her cataracts removed.
For quality eye care, call the Cataract and Laser Institute at 681-8505.
There must be hundreds of ways to make a fashion statement, but only one way to get paid for it. Start a career in retail merchandising. Call Sawyer School today.
Looks like you're on the move with that job. Where did you go to school?
Sawyer.
Oh, you are going places, aren't you?
Sawyer. Call 261-5700.
Local victims of domestic abuse react to the verdict on Eyewitness News live at 5.
Now, live on Day and Date.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson.
The jury speaks, the verdict is in, and the nation watches in awe.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
Day and Date takes you inside the most captivating day in the trial of the century. From the testimony that turned the jury.
Was that white Bronco there at the time you drove by at about 10:22?
I didn't see it.
To the future of America's most famous prisoner.
He's going to start his life all over again.
O.J. Simpson, the verdict. This is Day and Date for Tuesday, October 3, 1995. Live from New York City with Dana King and Patrick Van Horn.
Good afternoon, everybody. If you haven't heard, amazingly, if you haven't, the verdict is in. O.J. Simpson, not guilty.
It is the trial that has had the eye of the nation for more than a year, the people versus O.J. Simpson, and it came down to this.
Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles. In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony, upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information.
Outside the courtroom, reaction was immediate and emotional. The acquittal stunned the prosecution and the victims' families. And this was the reaction from members of the Simpson family.
A statement from my father. I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over. My first obligation is to my young children, who will be raised the way that Nicole and I had always planned. My second obligation is to my family and to those friends who never wavered in their support. But when things have settled a bit, I will pursue, as my primary goal in life, the killer or killers who slaughtered Nicole and Mr. Goldman.
I was always in prayer. I knew that my son was innocent. And I had the support of so many people all over the world. And I know that prayer of the righteous prevaileth much. And I believed in that.
We never wavered in our faith. We were always optimistic. That optimism proved right.
We came here in search of justice. You will have to be the judges, I expect, as to whether or not any of us found it today. But I'm not bitter, and I'm not angry. But I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have
this prosecution team didn't lose today. I deeply believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served. I will forever be proud of my son and my family. Thank you.
Thank you.
A year-long drama that started with O.J. Simpson fleeing police ended the way it began, with O.J. Simpson stepping out of a white car at his Rockingham estate, this time a free man.
It's O.J. Simpson hugging Al Cowlings as he
Right.
stepped out of his car returning to his estate.
The two reunited again. Well, 133 days of testimony boiled down to less than 4 hours to reach a verdict. Joining us now live in San Francisco to talk about the stunning Simpson verdict is Day and Date's trial expert, Jamie Floyd. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Dana.
You called it yesterday. Are you surprised at the outcome?
No, I can't say that I am surprised. I don't think either a conviction or an acquittal would have surprised me. The speed with which the jury reached the verdict continues to surprise me, and a hung jury would have surprised me after such a lengthy sequestration of these people. But no, the acquittal does not surprise me, not too terribly much, Dana.
Jamie, if you could explain something, jury nullification or payback, that's something that some people are claiming entered into the deliberations here.
Well, you know, I've heard some of the analysts explain those two as if they are one and the same thing, and I think they're actually a little bit different. Jury nullification essentially occurs when the lawyer suggests to the jury that the jury should respond by saying, so what? So what if he did it? And often you see it in cases, misdemeanor cases most often, where the jury might feel the law is improper. For example, in prostitution cases where the jurors might feel prostitution shouldn't be illegal, and so what, therefore, if the defendant committed the crime? That's the nullification. Payback is a little different. Payback is when you say to this jury, let's pay this district attorney's office back, let's pay the police back, let's send a signal to the police and to the society in general that planting of evidence or whatever it is you think they might have done wrong in a particular case will not convince a jury of a defendant's guilt.
All right, so in looking at all of this, O.J.'s not guilty, then the LAPD has to go out and look for who did this horrible thing. Now, that's where double jeopardy comes into it. If O.J. sometime down the road there's some evidence to show that he was a part of this. There's nothing that can be done.
Absolutely not. In fact, if O.J. Simpson confessed this evening on national television, they could not prosecute him for these crimes. They've had their one shot. Jeopardy has attached. And if they tried to prosecute him again, he would simply enter a plea of once in jeopardy, and the court would determine that he could not be tried again, Dana. You're absolutely right.
Let's talk about family law for a moment. O.J. Simpson wants his 2 young children back. They're now in the custody of Nicole Simpson's parents. Can he get them back, knowing all the other things that the jury didn't know?
Absolutely. At the beginning of the trial, the Browns, Lou and Juditha Brown, petitioned to have legal guardianship of these children during the proceedings, and I think that was in July. And in August, O.J. Simpson signed his agreement. He said, yes, while I'm enduring these proceedings, I want you to watch my children because you are their grandparents. You are the parents of my dead wife. You can have them for now. Now that these proceedings are over, these children belong with O.J. Simpson until the court says otherwise. And in California, it is a tremendous burden to take children away from parents. We've had cases in California, relatively well-known cases, where people convicted of felonies have been awarded custody of their children upon release from jail. You have to demonstrate not only that the parent is unfit, and of course a conviction will demonstrate that. Here we don't even have a conviction, we only have a prosecution, but you also have to demonstrate that it's in the best interest of the child to remove that child, and that's a very hard burden to meet when a natural parent is vying for custody of the child.
Jamie Floyd in San Francisco, we'll talk to you again in just a little bit.